I had $37, 63 liters of diesel, and an old bus with a dead heater. While the temperature outside dropped toward -20, cars were sliding across the parking lot. The power failed in the apartment blocks, and my phone warned that the night would get colder. Then a calm voice sounded inside my head. Primary vehicle detected. Condition: broken. Owner confirmed. Leon Voss. Bind this vehicle as primary transport? A pale diagram appeared over the steering wheel. The heater, batteries, cracked windows, suspension, and half the engine glowed red. Beneath them sat one instruction: provide compatible materials. Installed components may be upgraded and integrated into the primary vehicle. The wind shook the mirrors. I looked around the frozen bus I had bought because I could no longer afford rent. If that message was real, this wreck might be the only reason I survived the night. I pressed yes. The panel vanished, but the knowledge remained. The bus had been bound to him. He could not transfer the system to another vehicle. He could not point at a car and upgrade it. He could not create fuel, food, metal, batteries, or spare parts from nothing. The system would only improve real material that had been brought to the bus and made part of it. For almost anyone else, those limitations might have sounded disappointing. For Leon, who was currently living inside a vehicle that leaked cold air through 3 windows and rainwater through 2 sections of roof, they sounded wonderful. He was 26, lean rather than muscular, with dark navy hair that looked black in poor light, and one sharp white streak above his left temple. His amber eyes and pale scar across his right eyebrow made him look more confident than he usually felt. At the moment, wrapped in 2 coats with a wool blanket around his shoulders, confidence was not his strongest feature. His life had taken a spectacular turn downward over the previous month. The delivery company where he worked had collapsed. Leon had spent 4 years driving delivery vans and, during busy seasons, medium box trucks, so large commercial vehicles did not frighten him. An intercity bus was still much longer and heavier than anything he had handled regularly. And the first days behind its wheel had taught him that confidence was not the same as skill. His landlord had raised the rent. Leon had spent most of his savings keeping up with bills while looking for another job. When the lease finally ended, he had done something his friends described as reckless and he described as mathematically necessary. He bought an old intercity bus at an auction for almost nothing. The plan had been simple: park legally on a cheap industrial lot, sleep inside, take temporary work, and convert the rear of the bus into a basic living space over several months. The bus was ugly, but it had room. Room was cheaper than rent. The seller had been a cheerful man named Dobbs, who had padded the side panel and promised that the engine still had plenty of life. Leon had asked why it was being sold for less than some used motorcycles. Dobbs had replied that some mysteries were better left unsolved. The mystery was currently trying to kill him. Leon stood and crossed the dark passenger compartment. The bus still smelled faintly of old vinyl, dust, engine oil, and the lemon cleaner he had used 3 days earlier. He had removed most of the rear seats already, leaving a mattress, 2 plastic storage boxes, a camp stove, bottled water, canned food, a tool bag, and several blankets. It was poor, but it had been enough when the temperature was above freezing. Now frost was growing around the inside edges of the windows. The system returned when he focused on the dead heater. Heating system, severe efficiency loss, suggested compatible materials, insulation, functional heating element, electrical storage, copper wiring, sheet metal. No glowing reward chest appeared. No miracle furnace dropped into his lap. Leon swore softly, pulled on gloves, and looked through the windshield. The bus was parked at the far end of a mixed commercial district. A tire shop sat across the lot. Beyond it were a furniture warehouse, a small auto parts store, and several rows of abandoned cars. People had left many vehicles when the roads first began icing over. Some owners were still nearby, but the far end of the lot had become chaotic enough that nobody seemed to be watching individual cars anymore. Leon took a pry bar, a flashlight, his tool bag, and an empty plastic sled he had bought for moving supplies. Before opening the door, he checked the temperature again. -16. The wind made it feel worse. The first breath outside hurt his teeth. He moved quickly. The nearest abandoned sedan had a dead battery, but the second one did not. He disconnected it, with fingers already stiffening inside his gloves. From a wrecked delivery van, he pulled a length of heavy copper cable. The auto parts store had been locked when he passed it an hour earlier. Now the front glass had been broken. Leon stepped inside, kept his flashlight low, and found shelves half-stripped by people who had taken antifreeze, jump leads, flashlights, and anything that looked immediately useful. Most had ignored rolls of thermal lining and exhaust wrap. Leon took both. A noise behind him made him turn. A man in a green winter coat stood near the entrance holding 2 jugs of motor oil. He stared at Leon's sled, then at the rolls of insulation. "You building a blanket fort?" Leon considered explaining. Instead, he was fixing a heater. The man snorted and walked away with his oil. 5 minutes later, Leon found a compact diesel air heater still boxed on a lower shelf. It was not large enough to heat the whole bus efficiently, but the system marked it as compatible. He dragged it outside, loaded it onto the sled, and hurried back. He was halfway across the lot when the power failed completely. The streetlights died. The auto parts store became a black rectangle behind him. Somewhere in the darkness, somebody screamed after slipping on the ice. A car accelerated too hard, lost traction, and struck a concrete divider with a crunch of metal. Leon kept moving. The bus door felt like the entrance to another world, even though the inside was almost as cold as the outside. He hauled everything in, locked the door, and spent the next 40 minutes doing the ugliest installation of his life. He bolted the heater unit to a metal plate near the old heating duct, connected the battery and wiring, stuffed thermal lining into accessible wall cavities, and fixed what he could with clamps and screws from his tool bag. He knew enough not to route exhaust into the cabin. Beyond that, his work would have made a professional mechanic cry. The system did not care about elegance. It cared that the components were physically present, compatible, and attached to the bus. When Leon tightened the final clamp, the pale interface appeared. Compatible materials detected. Current heating system may be upgraded to E rank. Integrate? Please, Leon said. The change began quietly. The battery casing shimmered. Metal seemed to flow at the edges, without becoming liquid. The crude wires Leon had attached pulled themselves into clean channels. Insulation disappeared behind interior panels, as if the walls inhaled it. The old heater housing reshaped around the new unit. Ducts that had been cracked for years straightened and sealed. The entire process lasted less than 30 seconds. Then warm air poured from the vents. Leon stood directly in front of one, like a worshiper before an altar. The air was not merely warm, it was hot. He checked the display he had taped near the driver's seat. Cabin temperature, -7. 2 minutes later, -2. 6 minutes later, +6. 15 minutes later, +18. Leon took off one glove, then the other, then the first coat. Outside, the parking lot had become a dark field of blowing snow and stalled vehicles. A family in a nearby SUV had wrapped blankets around themselves. 2 men were burning broken pallets beside the loading dock. The flames bent almost sideways in the wind. Leon stood inside his rattle-trap bus, wearing one sweater, and felt warm air move across his face. He looked toward the windshield and saw his reflection. Dark hair, white streak, amber eyes, and an expression that was beginning to look dangerous in an entirely different way. The system displayed one more line. Primary vehicle status. Broken. Leon laughed. If this is broken, I want to see what you call good. He did not sleep much that night. The temperature continued falling. Emergency alerts warned residents to remain indoors. The city government announced temporary warming centers, then admitted that several had lost power. The cellular network became unreliable. Every hour the wind grew louder. Leon spent the time taking inventory. Food for perhaps 9 days if he ate normally. Longer if he rationed. 28 liters of bottled water. 63 liters of diesel in the tank. 1 propane cylinder for the camp stove. A tool set. 2 blankets. Winter clothing. and very little cash that suddenly mattered less than the canned beans under his mattress. He also studied the system. The interface was simple. It did not give him quests. It did not offer a store. It did not hand out points. It showed the condition of the bus and suggested possible upgrades when Leon focused on a specific problem. Most of the diagram was ugly. Engine, poor. Suspension, critical wear. Primary battery, poor. Tires, unsuitable for current environment. Frame, acceptable for current mass only. Windows, vulnerable. Water storage, minimal. Living capacity, minimal. The new heater was the only clean green section on the entire display. Leon liked looking at it. At 7 in the morning, he decided to move before the parking lot became completely blocked. The bus started on the 4th attempt. That alone felt like a victory. He let the engine warm, cleared ice from the windshield, put the transmission into gear, and eased forward. The rear wheels spun. The bus moved perhaps half a meter and stopped. Leon tried again, with less throttle. The tires spun more slowly, polishing the packed snow beneath them into ice. He reversed. The left rear wheel slipped sideways toward a curb. A warning flashed across the system display. Suspension load unstable. Leon stopped. He stared through the windshield at the exit, less than 80 meters away. His warm home was trapped in a parking lot. The system offered no free solution. It highlighted the tires, the aging suspension, the weak starter batteries, and the fuel system that was already struggling with the cold. Leon leaned back in the driver's seat and rubbed both hands over his face. He had survived the first night. Now he needed to make the dead thing move. Across the city, emergency sirens began to sound. By mid-morning, the city had begun to understand that this was not a bad winter storm. Leon understood it from the sound. A normal city never truly became quiet. Even before sunrise, there were engines, delivery trucks, distant trains, air conditioners, elevators, construction equipment, and the low mechanical hum of millions of small systems doing their jobs. Now whole layers of that noise were disappearing. The highway beyond the parking lot had stopped moving. Cars sat at strange angles across 3 lanes. Some were abandoned. Others still held people waiting for rescue that was not coming quickly enough. A bus from the city transit company stood near an intersection with its hazard lights blinking weakly. Leon's own bus was warm, but warmth did not make it useful if he could not leave. He studied an offline map on his phone. 2 kilometers east was a municipal bus depot and repair yard. He had noticed it when towing his purchase across town. If any place still had heavy winter tires, batteries, fluids, and suspension parts, it would be there. Walking 2 kilometers in minus 21 degrees was possible with good clothing. Carrying several hundred kilograms of parts back was not. Leon looked at the system diagram again. The tires were the most urgent failure. The battery system came second. If he could improve those 2, the bus might crawl to the depot under its own power. The tire shop across the lot had been locked the previous night. Now, 3 men were forcing open the service bay with a pickup truck and a chain. Leon watched them for a minute. They were not stealing televisions or jewelry. They wanted winter tires. Everyone was learning the same lesson. Leon waited until the men loaded a set of SUV tires into the pickup and left, then crossed the lot. Inside the shop, he found rows of tires, but almost none sized for a heavy bus. The system marked several as incompatible. He kept searching until he found 6 commercial winter tires intended for delivery trucks. They were too small to use directly, but the system highlighted their reinforced rubber compound and metal studding as useful material. He also found 2 heavy starter batteries and a box of tire chains. The owner of the shop appeared from a back office holding a baseball bat. He was elderly, red-faced, and furious. Leon raised both hands and explained that he was not planning to empty the place. He needed the 6 truck tires, the batteries, and chains. He offered cash out of habit. The old man looked at the notes in Leon's gloved hand and laughed so hard that he coughed. He wanted food instead. Leon had 9 days of food and no idea when he would find more. Giving any away felt wrong. Leaving without the parts felt worse. They settled on 4 cans of meat and 2 bottles of water. It was Leon's first real trade after the city began collapsing, and it taught him something immediately. Money still existed, but nobody knew what it would be worth tomorrow. Food already had a price, everyone understood. The owner helped Leon roll the tires back, using a flat cart. He refused to come with him. His wife lived in the apartments above the shop, and he would not leave without her. Leon gave him the address of the nearest warming center from memory, though neither man knew if it still had power. Back at the bus, Leon attached the materials as best he could. The system allowed the tire rubber, studs, chains, and 2 of his least damaged existing wheels to be integrated into a winter mobility upgrade. It also accepted the starter batteries. The transformation was more dramatic than the heater. The worn rear tires thickened, tread blocks deepened. Reinforced sidewalls formed around the rims. The front pair changed next, then the remaining wheels. Chains did not remain as loose chains. They became retractable traction bands built into the wheel assemblies, ready to engage when needed. The batteries were pulled into a compact insulated housing under the floor. The system message was brief. Mobility support upgraded. E rank. Cold start reliability improved. Leon tried the engine. It started on the second turn. He grinned, selected first gear, and eased forward. The bus climbed out of the ruts it had made earlier. It was not graceful. The old suspension still groaned. The steering had too much play. The engine sounded like a bucket of bolts thrown downstairs. But it moved. Leon drove across the parking lot at walking speed. The old tire shop owner watched from the doorway and lifted one hand. Leon returned the gesture. Then the left rear suspension made a crack loud enough to erase the smile from his face. He stopped immediately. The system showed a mounting bracket under severe stress. "Fine," Leon muttered. "We crawl." He kept the speed below 15 kilometers per hour and headed toward the depot. The city outside his windshield already looked altered. Snow blew between buildings in sheets. Traffic lights were dark. People dragged shopping carts through the road because sidewalks were covered in ice. A pharmacy had a line extending around the block. 2 police cars were parked near a supermarket where people were shouting at security guards. Leon passed without stopping. Every time he saw a crowd, he became more aware that his bus was warm. That made it valuable. For now, it still looked too ugly for anyone to guess how valuable. The depot gate was half open. One side had been struck by a vehicle and bent inward. Leon drove through and parked beside a maintenance building. The yard contained more than 30 buses, several service vans, a tow truck, and a line of snowplows. Most were dead. A few had been stripped for batteries already. Leon had taken 3 steps into the maintenance hall when a wrench flew past his head. It hit the wall behind him with a clang. "Next one hits your teeth," a voice said. A large man emerged from behind a raised bus. He was in his mid-50s, broad across the shoulders, wearing an orange mechanic's jacket, darkened by grease. His iron-gray hair was cropped short, and a heavy mustache covered most of his upper lip. Green eyes narrowed beneath thick eyebrows. He held another wrench in one hand. Leon slowly raised his palms. "I need parts. So does everyone. I can trade." "For what?" Leon thought about his food and immediately regretted coming. Then the mechanic looked past him through the open bay door. "That your bus?" Leon nodded. The man's expression changed from suspicion to professional offense. "You drove that here?" "Mostly." "Why?" Leon glanced at the bus. "Housing market." The mechanic stared at him for several seconds, then barked out a laugh. His name was Victor Hale. He had worked at the depot for 19 years and had slept in the maintenance office the previous night because roads to his neighborhood had become impassable. His wife had died 3 years earlier. His adult daughter lived in another country. He had tried to start a service truck at dawn, but its diesel had begun waxing in the extreme cold, and the batteries were weak. Victor listened while Leon explained what he needed. He was willing to trade parts for a ride west, if Leon could get the bus reliable enough. There was an emergency shelter near Victor's apartment block where several former co-workers had gathered. Leon agreed. Then Victor stepped into the bus to inspect it. Warm air hit his face. He stopped halfway up the steps. The temperature outside was -23. Inside, it was +19. Victor touched the wall panel, then the heater vent. Then he crouched and looked under the dash. This heater wasn't in this bus. I installed it. When? Last night. Victor turned slowly. With what tools? Leon held up his cheap tool bag. The mechanic looked at the bag, then at Leon, then at the integrated heating duct with its clean sealed joints. You are either lying, Victor said, or somebody taught you mechanical work in a country where physics is optional. Leon smiled. I improved it a little. A little? That's the technical term. Victor pointed a grease-stained finger at him. If you say that again, I'm charging you double. They worked for nearly 2 hours. Victor found a compatible set of heavy bus tires with better load ratings, 2 suspension assemblies from retired vehicles, shock absorbers, leaf spring sections, cold weather lubricants, filters, fuel line insulation, and a stack of spare electrical components. Leon did not need all of it for one upgrade, but he loaded everything the system marked as useful. Victor noticed that Leon chose parts strangely. He would stare at a shelf for a few seconds, ignore 3 expensive components, then pull out an older item nobody else would have selected. You know something I don't? Victor asked. I know what my bus likes. Your bus has preferences now? Very strong ones. Victor muttered something about young people losing their minds. The first warning came from outside. A van entered the yard too fast, slid sideways, recovered, and stopped near the parts warehouse. 4 men jumped out. One carried a hunting rifle, another had a crowbar. The other 2 were dragging empty plastic drums. Victor's face tightened. They were here this morning. Took batteries from the front row. I told them the rest belonged to the city. Leon looked at the abandoned depot around them. I don't think municipal property law is doing well today. The men spotted them. The one with the rifle shouted that they wanted diesel and the tow truck keys. Victor shouted back that the tow truck was empty and the diesel tank was electronically locked. That was true. The large underground fuel tank had a damaged control pump. Victor had no way to access it quickly. The men did not believe him. The one with the crowbar entered the maintenance hall. Leon did not want to fight. He especially did not want to fight outside his bus. He had no firearm. Victor had wrenches. The rifle changed the calculation immediately. Leon noticed the raised city bus above them, held on a hydraulic lift. He noticed the control box beside Victor. He also noticed 2 service vans parked nose to nose near the side exit. Can you drop that bus fast? Leon asked quietly. Victor glanced up. Fast enough to ruin my day. Leon walked toward the side aisle and deliberately kicked a metal bucket. The sound echoed. The man with the crowbar turned toward him. The rifleman outside shifted to get a view through the open bay. Leon ran. A shot cracked through the building. Concrete dust burst from the wall beside him. He felt the pressure of the bullet more than he heard it. The crowbar man chased him between the service vans. Leon pulled open the driver's door of the first van, leaned across the seat, and struck the horn. Nothing. Dead battery. Great plan, he whispered. The crowbar swung at his shoulder. Leon dropped behind the door. Metal rang as the bar hit the frame. Leon shoved the door outward with both feet. It struck the man's knee and knocked him off balance. Leon did not stay to fight. He crawled through the van, kicked open the passenger door, and sprinted toward the rear of the hall. The rifleman entered now, trying to find an angle. That was what Leon wanted. Victor? Victor hit the emergency release. The raised city bus dropped less than a meter before the safety system caught it with a violent crash. The sound was enormous. Everyone flinched. At the same moment, Leon grabbed a portable jump pack from the workbench and connected it to the second service van. He hit the alarm button on the key fob hanging from its ignition. The horn began screaming. So did 3 neighboring vehicles whose panic sensors reacted to the vibration. The hall became a box of echoing noise. The rifleman swore and turned instinctively toward Victor. Leon grabbed the nearest thing on the workbench, a bottle of windshield washer fluid, and threw it at the overhead lights. The bottle missed. It hit a metal sign instead and exploded blue liquid across the floor. Victor looked at him. Was that part of the plan? Absolutely. The crowbar man came around the van again. His boot hit the washer fluid. He went down hard. Leon stared for half a second. I meant to do that. Victor slammed the maintenance office door open against the man's partner as he entered from the side corridor. Then he pointed toward the bus. Move! They did not win the yard. They did not need to. Leon and Victor ran through the side bay, reached Leon's bus, and climbed inside. Leon locked the door as the rifleman emerged from the maintenance hall. The first shot struck the rear side panel with a sharp metallic crack. The old bodywork dented. The second shot shattered a rear window. Cold air blasted through the cabin. Leon ducked behind the driver's seat and started the engine. It turned once, twice. The new battery system caught. The engine fired. Victor dropped into the passenger seat. Drive. Working on it. Leon engaged the winter traction bands and accelerated toward the bent gate. The bus moved, but the damaged suspension groaned under the weight of all the loaded parts. The van from the attackers pulled across the exit. Leon did not have armor. He did not have the mass distribution for a hard ram. Hitting it at speed could destroy his front suspension. He aimed instead for the packed snow beside the gate. That's not the road, Victor said. I noticed. Leon kept the left wheels on pavement and climbed the right side onto the snowbank. The bus leaned dangerously. The van blocked most of the opening, but not the top of the bank. The new tires bit. The retractable traction bands locked around the drive wheels. For 3 long seconds, the bus barely moved. Then, the right wheels climbed. The body tilted farther. Victor grabbed the dash. If we roll this thing, I will kill you before the cold does. The bus scraped the bent gate post, tore off part of a side mirror, and dropped back onto the road beyond the van. Leon accelerated. Another shot hit the rear panel. Then, the depot disappeared behind blowing snow. They drove only 6 blocks before Leon pulled into the shelter of a warehouse and stopped. His hands were shaking now that the danger had passed. Victor noticed the broken rear window and a suspension warning. You need to fix both before we go anywhere else. Leon looked at the crates of parts filling the rear floor. That was the idea. Victor watched as Leon bolted a replacement spring assembly into temporary position, attached shock components, laid additional reinforcement pieces along the mounting points, and connected the spare battery modules. He asked fewer questions this time. When Leon finished, the system appeared. Compatible suspension and mobility materials detected. Upgrade available. D-Rank Winter Mobility Package. Integrate? Leon accepted. Victor saw it happen. He saw corroded bolts vanish into clean reinforced mounts. He saw old leaf springs reshape. He saw the replacement tires thicken into a matched commercial winter set. He saw the insulated battery housing extend itself beneath the floor. He saw damaged fuel lines seal and reroute into protected channels. The mechanic sat down on an overturned crate. For nearly a minute, he said nothing. Leon waited. Finally, Victor pointed at the bus floor. That is not mechanical work. Correct. You knew this would happen. Yes. Can you do it to any vehicle? No. Just this one. Victor looked around the old cabin with new respect and a little fear. Can it make fuel? No. Food? No. Weapons? Not unless I attach something that actually belongs on the bus. And even then, I don't know. Can it make you less insane behind the wheel? Leon considered. Apparently not. Victor nodded. Then the system has limits. Good. The old mechanic did not ask where the power came from. Leon could see the question sitting behind his eyes, but Victor had watched a city freeze in less than 2 days. His standards for impossible events had become flexible. They replaced the shattered rear window temporarily with 2 layers of plastic and a sheet of composite paneling from the depot. The system sealed it enough to restore heat, though it did not count as a full armor upgrade. Then Leon started the bus again. The difference was immediate. The steering felt tighter. The body no longer lurched over every rut. The engine still sounded old, but the starter snapped it awake on the first turn. The tires climbed over snow that had trapped smaller cars. Victor listened to the suspension through the floor. "I hate this," he said. "The bus? No. The fact that it rides better than half the fleet I maintained for 20 years. Leon smiled. They turned west, toward Victor's neighborhood. The dead bus had moved. Now Leon needed to make it livable. Victor's neighborhood was only 5 kilometers away. The drive took 40 minutes. The first reason was the snow. The second was traffic abandoned in places no sane driver would choose. The third was people. Every few blocks, someone stepped into the road and waved at the bus. Some wanted a ride. Some wanted heat. One man offered Leon a gold watch for 2 liters of diesel. A woman carrying a little girl offered cash for a trip to the Western Hospital. Leon wanted to help everyone, but every open door dumped heat into the street. Every extra passenger consumed food and water, and he had no idea whether the hospital was operating. That reality arrived faster than the cold itself. He stopped for the woman and child anyway. Victor said nothing until they were moving again. "You know we can't do that every time." Leon kept his eyes on the road. "I know. Knowing and doing are different professions. Which one are you?" "We complain about both." They dropped the mother and daughter at a school that had been converted into an emergency warming center. The gymnasium still had power from a diesel generator, though the line at the door stretched down the block. Leon gave them 2 bottles of water and left before anyone could organize a crowd around the bus. Victor watched people turn their heads as the warm cabin light moved away. "Paint this thing uglier," he said. Leon looked at the rusted ceiling. "I don't think that's possible." Victor's apartment block had no power. The pipes had frozen during the night. 2 of his former co-workers were already gone, and a note taped inside the lobby said they had moved to the municipal sports center. Victor stood in his apartment for several minutes, looking at family photographs on a shelf. He packed clothes, a framed picture of his daughter, a set of precision tools, and a bottle of good whiskey he had been saving for a birthday. Leon did not hurry him. On the way downstairs, Victor carried a cardboard box with his tools balanced on top. "You bring the whiskey for disinfectant?" Leon asked. "Emergency morale equipment. Very technical. You have your magic bus, I have medicine." By afternoon, cellular service failed completely in the western half of Northgate. Radio stations repeated emergency instructions, but the instructions changed every hour. Stay home. Go to warming centers. Avoid travel. Leave buildings without heat. Conserve fuel. Report to shelters. The city was issuing orders for a city that no longer existed in one piece. Leon and Victor stopped at a supermarket on the edge of a retail district. The parking lot was full, but people were no longer shopping normally. Security guards limited everyone to 1 basket. Arguments broke out at the entrance. Shelves of bread, bottled water, batteries, canned meat, and medicine were almost empty. Leon had enough food for 2 people for perhaps 6 days now. They needed supplies, but joining the crowd would mean leaving the bus unattended. Victor volunteered to go inside, while Leon stayed with the vehicle. 40 minutes later, he returned with a sack of rice, powdered milk, canned beans, crackers, salt, 2 boxes of tea, and exactly 1 chocolate cake. Leon stared at the cake. Survival essential? Victor placed it carefully on the dashboard. It was the last one. Civilization has standards. They ate half of it while watching people fight over bags of charcoal. The temperature fell to -26 before sunset. The next problem appeared when Leon tried to run lights, heater, and small appliances at the same time. The upgraded batteries were far better than before, but they were still starter batteries designed around a vehicle, not a house. The system displayed a growing energy deficit. Victor saw the numbers on the voltmeter and frowned. "If you keep pulling like this with the engine off, you'll kill even your miracle batteries." Leon already knew. The system highlighted the same issue. Heating efficiency was good. Electrical generation was poor. Water storage remained minimal. Living capacity was still classified as emergency only. The nearest promising source of equipment was a home improvement warehouse attached to a large shopping center. It had portable generators, wiring, water tanks, pumps, insulation, and camping supplies. It also sat near one of the biggest residential districts in Northgate. That meant crowds. They went before dawn. The bus handled the roads much better after its mobility upgrade. Leon discovered he could engage the traction bands only when needed. The system had also protected the fuel lines from freezing, which mattered more each hour. Several modern cars they passed had become expensive snow-covered boxes because their batteries had died. The shopping center appeared through pale morning fog. Half the windows were dark. The eastern entrance had been forced open, but there were still people inside, carrying boxes out, under the watch of a few exhausted security guards. A portable radio near the entrance announced that the temperature might drop below -30 that night. Leon and Victor took 2 flat carts. They moved fast. A 7-kilowatt diesel generator, heavy cable, 2 deep cycle battery packs, water tanks, a pump, filter cartridges, PEX tubing, heat exchangers, a small electric hot plate, more insulation, several LED light strips, a compact water heater. The system marked each item as compatible with one of 3 categories: power generation, water handling, living module. Victor raised an eyebrow when Leon ignored a large gasoline generator and chose the smaller diesel one. Why that? Same fuel as the bus. Easier supply. Victor nodded. Good answer. Maybe you're trainable. They were loading the second cart when a woman in a paramedic jacket came running through the warehouse. Her hair was the first thing Leon noticed. It was a deep wine red, long enough to reach the middle of her back, but tightly braided so it would not catch on anything. Her face was pale from cold and exhaustion. Gray eyes swept across the shelves and landed on Victor's cart. Do either of you have a working vehicle? Victor looked at Leon. Leon asked what happened. The woman introduced herself as Lena Ward. She had been working a temporary aid point inside the shopping center with 2 nurses and a retired doctor. Part of the roof over the west service corridor had collapsed under ice. A fire door jammed. 6 people were trapped on the far side, including a boy with asthma and an older man who could barely walk. The building's heating system had failed 10 minutes earlier. They had maybe an hour before that section became dangerously cold. Leon looked at his carts. He looked at the bus outside. Victor knew what he was thinking. We can come back for the rest, the mechanic said. Leon nodded. Lena led them through the warehouse to the service corridor. The collapsed roof had dumped metal framing, insulation, and heavy panels across the main passage. The emergency door beyond it could be opened from the trapped side, but nobody there had the strength to force it against twisted framing. A maintenance exit from that corridor opened onto a loading lane behind the building. The lane was buried under half a meter of wind-blown snow. Leon saw the solution. They did not need to clear the whole corridor. They needed to reach the outside door. He ran back to the bus with Victor. The rear loading lane was narrow. Delivery trucks had left trailers parked along one side. Leon engaged traction support and pushed through the snow slowly. The bus's improved tires found grip, but the front bumper began plowing snow into a dense mound. We need an actual plow, Victor said. Add it to the list. The list is becoming a second vehicle. Leon stopped as close to the maintenance exit as possible. 8 meters of exposed ground remained between the door and the bus. 8 meters was not far on a normal day. At -27, with wind gusting hard enough to steal breath, it mattered. Lena and Victor worked from inside. Leon took a pry bar, a hammer, and a tow strap from the bus. He wrapped the strap around a steel section of the twisted door frame, ran it back to a reinforced towing point under the bus, and tightened it slowly. The old body could not take a violent pull. The new suspension and traction system could provide torque, but the frame was still largely original. Victor warned him not to jerk it. Leon eased forward. The strap tightened. The metal frame groaned. The wheels slipped once. Traction bands engaged automatically. The bus pulled again. A section of frame bent outward by 10 centimeters. Lena shouted from the doorway that it was not enough. Leon backed up carefully and repositioned the strap lower. Second pull. The door shifted. A man inside pushed at the same time. The opening became wide enough for a person. Lena crawled through first. The trapped group emerged one at a time. The asthmatic boy was wrapped in 2 coats and wheezing. An older man could not cross the snow quickly, so Leon and Victor used the plastic supply sled to pull him directly to the bus. The moment Lena stepped inside, she stopped. Warm air struck her face. She looked at the small thermometer near the driver's seat. Outside temperature, -27. Cabin temperature, +19. She touched it with one finger as though testing whether it was fake. How? Victor climbed in behind her. He improved it a little. Leon looked at him. Victor's mustache twitched. I understand why you say it now. Lena did not have time to question them. The boy needed treatment. She sat him on Leon's mattress, used a rescue inhaler from her pack, and kept him in the warmest part of the bus until his breathing steadied. The older man had early frostbite on 2 fingers. Another woman had twisted her ankle during the collapse. Within 10 minutes, the bus became a tiny emergency room. Leon stood near the front and watched his living space disappear under people, bags, blankets, and medical equipment. It should have annoyed him. Instead, he noticed something more important. The heater held temperature, even with 10 people inside. The bus could do this. The building could not. They transported the rescued group to a nearby civic center that still had generator power. Lena refused to stay there. The center had more than 200 people and only 1 working generator. Fuel was estimated to last 20 hours. She had already seen 3 elderly patients moved twice in one day as shelters failed. Lena had spent 6 years working ambulances and temporary aid points. She knew how quickly a manageable patient became a critical one when a transfer took too long, an elevator failed, or a heated room suddenly stopped being heated. She had chosen emergency medicine because she preferred moving toward a problem instead of waiting for it to arrive. The cold had made that habit more important, not less. I need a place that moves, she said. Victor shrugged. We need someone who can stop you bleeding next time you drive through a gate. Leon asked Lena what she could contribute. She showed him her paramedic bag, then pointed at the carts still waiting in the shopping center. I know where the medical warehouse is. I know which clinics were evacuated, and I can cook more than canned beans. Victor looked offended. I can cook. Lena glanced at the empty chocolate cake box on the dash. I can cook food. She joined them. They returned to the warehouse before noon and loaded the remaining equipment. Lena added medical supplies from the aid point and insisted on taking extra blankets, antiseptic, painkillers, inhalers, wound dressings, and thermal packs. Leon gave up 2 storage compartments for her supplies. That decision cost him space, but paid for itself within hours. Lena reorganized the rear half of the bus with ruthless efficiency. Food went into one section, tools into another, medical supplies near the rear door. Wet clothing received a designated drying rack. She threw away 3 bags of junk Leon had kept because he thought they might be useful. He protested. Lena held up a cracked plastic cup. Explain its strategic value. Container. It leaks. Ventilated container. She threw it away. By evening, they parked inside the sheltered loading bay of an abandoned furniture warehouse. Leon attached the generator, batteries, water tanks, pump, tubing, heat exchangers, and wiring to the bus. Victor helped him make the connections safe enough for the system to recognize. The system offered a larger upgrade. Power generation and storage package available. Water recovery and filtration package available. Living support integration available. Upgrade primary vehicle to D-Rank support configuration. The transformation took almost a minute. The diesel generator compacted into a protected unit beneath the floor and integrated with the engine's alternator system. The battery bank became larger but more space efficient. Wiring disappeared behind sealed panels. Heat exchangers connected to the engine and heater so waste heat could warm water. The tanks settled into protected compartments low in the chassis. A compact filtration unit formed behind one interior wall. LED strips ran along the ceiling. A small induction surface appeared in the kitchenette. Leon had barely started building himself. The bus lights came on. Clean, steady light. Lena opened a tap near the small sink. Water flowed. She stared at it. Victor checked the electrical panel twice. Leon focused on the system. Current vehicle rank, D. Living capacity, 4 occupants sustainable with external food and fuel supply. Functional. Energy efficiency. Good. Frame capacity. Limited. External protection. Poor. Leon ignored the last two warnings for the moment. They had heat. They could melt and filter snow for water. They could charge radios and phones. They could cook. For dinner, Lena made rice with canned meat, onions taken from the supermarket, and enough seasoning to make Victor stare at the bowl in silence after the first bite. "You were right," he admitted. Lena smiled. "About what?" "I cannot cook." They ate around a folding table bolted to the floor. Outside, the wind howled through an industrial district, where most buildings were dark. Inside, the lights reflected warmly from the old windows. Leon realized they were visible from far away. He turned half the lights off and pulled curtains across the windows. Lena noticed. Afraid of attracting people? People or worse. Right now, people are enough. A middle-aged man they had allowed to warm himself for 10 minutes stood with one foot outside, shouting to his wife across the loading bay. A blast of cold air rolled through the cabin. Leon spun around. "Close the door." The man held it open. "She's coming." "Then close it until she gets here. It's 10 seconds. Leon pointed at the temperature display. "I did not dismantle half a shopping center so we could heat Northgate." "Close the door." The man shut it. 5 minutes later, Leon taped a handwritten sign beside the entrance. "Clear snow from your boots. Close the door." Victor added a third line beneath it. "The owner becomes emotional about heat." Leon crossed it out. The bus was becoming a home. Before they left the furniture warehouse, Victor checked the building's maintenance cage and found a manual transfer pump. The warehouse company had parked 3 diesel delivery trucks behind the loading bays, and a small day tank fed its emergency generator. 2 trucks were almost empty, and one batch of fuel showed water contamination, so Victor rejected it. After filtering the usable diesel, transferring it into the bus and portable cans, and accounting for the driving they had already done, their inventory stood at 186 liters. It was a useful reserve, not a miracle. And Leon wrote the source beside the number, so nobody forgot where it had come from. That made the next development far more dangerous. The following morning, as they moved through the eastern industrial district, searching for food and diesel, a black 4-wheel drive vehicle followed them for 6 blocks. It never came close. It never signaled. It simply stayed behind them, matching every turn. Leon watched it in the mirror. Lena secured the medical cabinet. At the next intersection, the black vehicle turned away. 10 minutes later, a second one appeared ahead. This one stopped across the road. A tall man in a black winter coat stepped out into the snow. His hair was jet black and combed neatly back, despite the weather. He wore no visible uniform, but the 2 men behind him carried rifles with the relaxed familiarity of people who knew how to use them. The stranger lifted one gloved hand. Leon stopped the bus, 40 meters away. The man smiled. He had found them before they found him. The man in the black coat did not approach until Leon opened the driver's side window 3 centimeters. Cold air hissed through the gap. "Leon, was?" the stranger asked. Leon did not answer immediately. The man smiled again. "The bus is distinctive. Your name was harder." That was not reassuring. He introduced himself as Maxim Volkov. Before the cold, he had managed private security and logistics for the Northgate freight terminal. After the cold, titles had become less formal. He now controlled the terminal, 2 warehouse blocks, a fuel depot, and about 40 people who depended on those facilities. Maxim spoke as if explaining a business proposal. He had heard about a bus with unusual heating, strong winter tires, and independent power. He wanted it inside his compound. Leon asked what that meant. "You keep driving it. You keep maintaining it. My people provide fuel, food, security, and access to warehouses. In return, the vehicle serves the group." "Who decides where it goes?" "I do." "Then it isn't mine." Maxim's smile faded, only slightly. He changed the offer. 1,200 liters of diesel, 30 days of food for Leon's group, and protected parking in exchange for ownership of the bus. Leon could remain as driver and technical specialist. Victor made a small sound from the passenger seat. Leon knew what it meant. 1,200 liters was enormous. At the bus's current consumption, even with system improvements, it represented months of careful movement. Food was becoming more valuable each day. A protected compound had obvious advantages. But Leon looked past Maxim at the two armed men standing beside the black vehicle. He imagined sleeping in his own bus while someone else held the keys. He imagined asking permission to leave. No. Maxim studied him. Think about it. I did. For 3 seconds. It was an easy question. Victor quietly covered his mouth with one hand. Maxim's gaze shifted to him, then back to Leon. Independence is expensive now. Fuel is harder to replace than pride. Leon nodded. Then, I should keep both while I can. For the first time, the men behind Maxim moved uneasily. Maxim did not threaten him. That made him more dangerous. He simply stepped away from the road and told Leon the offer would remain open for 2 days. Leon drove past. Nobody spoke for almost a minute. Then Lena asked how much fuel they had. Victor checked the gauge and the handwritten inventory sheet. 186 liters usable. Food? 10 days for 3 adults if Leon stops eating crackers every time he thinks nobody is looking. Leon stared ahead. Those are navigation crackers. Lena looked at the open packet beside his seat. You are parked. Planning requires energy. Victor tapped the fuel number. Maxim knows our weak point. Leon knew it too. The bus could keep them warm. It could move through streets where smaller cars were already failing. It could generate electricity and clean water. It could not make diesel. If Northgate's commercial fuel reserves became controlled by one group, freedom would shrink to the size of their tank. For the next 2 days, Leon avoided Maxim's district. He and Victor searched service stations, maintenance yards, construction sites, and abandoned delivery fleets. They found some diesel, but much of it was inaccessible without pumps. Several underground tanks had power failures. One station had already been drained. Another was guarded by residents who had converted the attached convenience store into a shelter. Leon traded 2 medical inhalers, with Lena's approval, for 40 liters there. The exchange bothered him. The inhalers had been intended for emergencies. The fuel was also an emergency. Every resource now had 2 uses and 1 future regret attached to it. They picked up a 4th permanent passenger during that period. Artem Reed was 31, thin, sandy blonde, with narrow pale blue eyes, and a habit of rubbing his hands together, even when he was warm. Leon found him at a warehouse district office, where he had worked as an inventory clerk. Artem knew which buildings held food, batteries, tools, and industrial chemicals, because he had spent 5 years processing manifests for them. That knowledge saved them hours. In return, Leon gave him a seat. Artem was useful immediately. He led them to a bakery supply warehouse that still held sealed flour, sugar, dried yeast, powdered milk, canned fruit, and bags of rice, overlooked by looters searching mainly for ready-to-eat food. He knew a cold storage distributor with palletized canned goods in a side building that did not require refrigeration. He also worried constantly. At every stop, he counted what they used. At dinner, he asked how much rice remained. Before sleeping, he asked whether the heater could fail. When Victor said no machine was incapable of failure, Artem slept badly. Leon understood fear. Fear was reasonable. Artem's fear simply never turned off. On the 3rd morning after meeting Maxim, a new emergency bulletin came through on shortwave radio. The national grid had separated into regional islands. Northgate's main power station was offline. Authorities were prioritizing hospitals, water pumping stations, and military communications. Civilian restoration had no estimated time. Forecast low, -34. The radio presenter repeated the number twice, as if saying it again might make it less absurd. Outside, snow had buried the lower halves of parked cars. Leon decided they needed better protection before the city became even more desperate. The decision became urgent before noon. They were returning from a food collection run when a delivery truck pulled from a side street and stopped across the road. Leon braked early. A second vehicle appeared behind them. Not Maxim's black 4-wheel drives. These were ordinary vans, but Leon recognized one driver from the freight terminal group. 3 men approached the bus. One carried a shotgun low against his leg. The leader knocked on the front door and told Leon that Maxim wanted to talk again. Leon kept the door closed. He said they could talk over radio. The leader replied that Leon had misunderstood. They were going to the terminal. "Move the truck," Leon said. The man struck the door with his gloved palm. "Don't make this stupid." Leon glanced at the mirrors. The rear van was close enough to block a reverse turn. Snowbanks boxed both sides of the road. The bus could push a light vehicle, but its frame had not been strengthened. The system warning about load capacity still mattered. Lena moved Artem toward the rear floor behind the seats. Victor quietly picked up a heavy pry bar. The man outside raised the shotgun and pointed it at the lower door glass. Leon made his decision. He shifted into reverse and accelerated just enough to make the rear van's driver panic. The bus moved 2 meters. The van behind reversed hard, tires spinning. Leon immediately braked, selected drive, and turned toward the narrow gap between the blocking truck and a snowbank. The leader realized what he was doing and fired. The shotgun blast shattered the lower pane of the front door. Glass sprayed across the steps. Cold air rushed in. Leon flinched but kept the wheel turned. The bus squeezed into the gap. Its right side scraped the snowbank. The left mirror struck the truck and folded backward. The old exterior panel screamed against metal. A second shot hit the side window behind Leon. The glass cracked into a white spider web but held. Then the bus cleared the truck and accelerated. The men did not pursue immediately. Their goal had been capture, not a running gunfight through icy streets. Leon drove 4 blocks before stopping beneath an overpass. His hands were steady until he opened them. A thin line of blood crossed one knuckle where glass had cut him. Lena cleaned it, while Victor inspected the damage. The front door window was gone. One side panel was deeply scraped. The left mirror was broken. The second window could fail. With one more hard strike, Artem stared at the hole in the door. "We should have gone with them." Leon looked at him. Artem swallowed. "I mean to talk. We could have gone to the terminal, heard the offer, left." They brought a shotgun to schedule a meeting. They have fuel, they have armed guards, they have buildings. We have one bus. Victor crouched beside the broken door and said, "You are sitting inside the one bus. Try not to insult it." Leon did not argue further. Artem was not entirely wrong. At that moment, a shotgun had proven the bus's most dangerous weakness in seconds. The system highlighted the damaged windows and the frame. Protective upgrade possible. Frame load capacity insufficient for heavy armor. Leon had expected that. He opened the offline industrial map Artem had provided. Northgate's southern zone contained fabrication companies, warehouse construction suppliers, a manufacturer of security doors, and a heavy equipment repair facility. The parts existed. The challenge was gathering them before Maxim decided to try again. They moved after dark. Victor objected at first. Night made navigation harder, but it also reduced the chance of being seen. Leon kept exterior lights low when possible, and used side streets. The improved heater kept the windshield clear while many roads glittered under black ice. Their first target was the security door manufacturer. The loading bay had been forced open already. Most thieves had taken portable tools and copper. Leon wanted the things nobody could easily carry. Laminated security glass panels, high-strength steel sheets, door reinforcement beams, composite wall panels. The bus became a cargo hauler. Victor used a manual pallet jack to move the heaviest pieces. Leon and Artem loaded smaller sections. Lena kept watch from the bus with a radio. The system marked the materials as useful, but repeated the same warning. Frame first. At the heavy equipment repair yard, Victor found what they needed. Reinforced subframe sections from a damaged snowplow. Cross members from a municipal truck. Suspension mounts designed for far greater weight than the bus currently carried. Heavy-duty air suspension components. Loading them was brutal. The temperature had reached -31. Even with gloves, exposed metal burned skin. Tools became painful to hold. Breath froze on scarves. They worked in 10-minute shifts, returning to the bus to warm their hands. Lena enforced the schedule. When Leon tried to stay outside longer, she grabbed his wrist and pressed 2 fingers against the skin above his glove. Inside. One more bracket. Inside. We need it. Lena leaned close enough that Leon could see ice crystals along the ends of her wine-red braid. The bus can survive without that bracket for 10 minutes. You cannot replace fingers with a system upgrade. Leon went inside. Artem watched the exchange and quietly adjusted his own timer. At the third site, they almost lost everything. A group of 6 looters had occupied the fabrication shop and were stripping copper from industrial machines. They noticed the bus before Leon noticed them. 2 pickup trucks moved to block the yard gate. This time, the men were not connected to Maxim. They wanted the loaded materials and the warm vehicle. One of them climbed onto a loading platform and shouted that Leon could leave on foot. Victor looked through the windshield at -32 on the display. To the left was a chain-link fence. To the right stood stacks of hollow steel tubing and pallets of sheet metal. Behind them was the fabrication building with a second loading door, but Leon did not know whether it opened to another street. The bus was still not armored. A direct fight was a bad idea. Leon reversed toward the building. The looters assumed he was trapped and approached. Lena asked what he was doing. Finding another door. And if there isn't one? Then I will pretend this was a very confident mistake. Victor checked the yard plan mounted near a security booth. There is a rear exit. Building runs through to Kestrel Street. Can we fit? Victor looked at the wide industrial door. If nobody left a forklift in the middle. Leon accelerated backward through the loading entrance. The bus barely cleared the door frame. Inside the fabrication hall, darkness swallowed them. Leon switched on the interior work lights through the windshield and saw machinery lining both sides of a central lane. A forklift stood in the middle. Victor slowly turned his head toward Leon. You had to ask. The pickups entered behind them. Leon had seconds. The forklift blocked most of the lane, but it was parked with its forks raised 20 centimeters. Leon stopped 3 meters away. Victor, can you move it? If it has battery. Victor jumped out with a portable power pack. Lena covered the open door with a fire extinguisher in her hands, because it was the closest thing available. Artem crouched behind the seats. One of the looters entered the building on foot. Leon stepped down, holding the pry bar. He did not want to fight. The man did. The looter swung a metal pipe at Leon's head. Leon backed away. The pipe struck the bus doorway and rang. The second swing came lower. Leon blocked with the pry bar, and pain shot through both wrists. He was not stronger. He was not better trained. He had only one advantage. He knew exactly where Lena was standing. He shifted left. The looter followed. Lena discharged the fire extinguisher directly into the man's face. A white cloud filled the doorway. The man stumbled blind. Leon shoved him outside and slammed the door. Useful medical technique, Leon said. Advanced certification. Behind them, the forklift motor whined. Victor drove it sideways, just far enough to open a gap. Leon took the wheel again. The pickups entered the hall as the bus squeezed past the forklift. A man struck a side window with the metal pipe as they passed. The already damaged glass burst inward. Lena ducked. Cold air and shards filled the aisle. Leon accelerated toward the far loading door. It was closed. Victor swore. The door used an electric motor. The power was out. A red emergency chain hung beside it. He ran forward, jumped down before Leon could stop him, and pulled the chain with both hands. The heavy door rose painfully slowly. The pickup behind them revved. Leon watched the opening. 1 meter. 1.5. 2. Not enough. The pickup accelerated. Artem kept pulling. The bottom of the door reached above the windshield. Get in, Leon shouted. Artem released the chain and dove through the bus door as Leon accelerated. The roof scraped the lower edge of the rising door with a horrible metallic shriek. The bus burst onto Kestrel Street. The pickup tried to follow too soon. Its roof lights struck the door, which had begun settling after Artem released the chain. The driver braked, trapping the second pickup behind him. Leon did not wait. They returned to the warehouse shelter with all the materials. Artem was shaking from adrenaline, but for once, he was smiling. Victor clapped him on the shoulder. Good pull. Artem looked at the old mechanic's hand, as if he had received a medal. Leon noticed that. He remembered it later. The armor integration took most of the night to prepare. Victor helped bolt frame sections along existing structural members. Leon attached new suspension components. They fixed temporary supports for the steel and composite panels. Security glass replaced broken windows. Reinforced door sections were mounted where the old bus doors had been vulnerable. Only when the load was distributed did the system finally turn green. Structural reinforcement compatible. Protective materials compatible. Upgrade available. C-rank armored mobile base. Leon accepted. The frame changed first. The floor vibrated as reinforced crossmembers integrated into the chassis. Suspension mounts grew thicker. The air support system became compact and protected. The body panels drew inward, layering steel and composite material where the bus needed it most. The security glass changed into thick laminated panes with internal heating elements. The front door rebuilt itself around a stronger frame. The bus became heavier, but the suspension settled as if designed for the weight. Current vehicle rank, C. A short system note appeared beneath it. Overall vehicle rank reflected the combined condition of the bus's core integrated systems. Individual modules could reach a rank before the whole vehicle did. When enough structural, mobility, power, and support systems crossed the next threshold together, the vehicle rank advanced. From outside, it still looked like a bus. A very angry bus. The original faded blue paint remained in patches between dark, reinforced panels. The long passenger windows were smaller now, surrounded by protective frames. The front looked broader. The wheel arches had gained shields. It had not become military hardware, but nobody would mistake it for public transport anymore. Victor walked around it twice. I have 3 professional objections. Leon waited. First, this should not be possible. Second, I want to drive it. Third, I hate you. Denied, maybe later, and thank you. Lena tested the new door seals. Artem touched the armored panel beside his seat. For the first time since joining them, he looked less afraid. That feeling lasted until the next afternoon. They were stopped at an intersection by one of Maxim's patrols. Only 2 men this time. One recognized Leon and walked to the side window with a rifle slung across his chest. He tapped the glass with his knuckles. Leon lowered an interior panel, but not the window. The man shouted through the glass that Maxim's offer was finished. Leon had 24 hours to report to the terminal. When Leon did not respond, the man lost patience. He pulled the rifle stock back and struck the window. The impact sounded dull. The glass did not crack. He hit it again. Nothing. Leon looked at him through the thick pane. The man's expression changed. Leon raised the metal cup of tea in his hand and took a slow sip. Then, he closed the interior privacy shutter. Victor laughed so hard that he started coughing. Leon drove away. The system still listed several weaknesses. Fuel supply, external. Powertrain efficiency, moderate. Operational range, limited. Leon watched the fuel gauge drop another fraction. Armor had solved one problem. It had made the next one impossible to ignore. The armored bus frightened people now. Leon noticed it at a small neighborhood fuel stop 2 days later. Before the armor, people approached the vehicle because they saw an old bus with working heat. After the armor, they stepped away from the curb when it arrived. Dark reinforced panels, heated laminated windows, larger tires, and the low mechanical note of its upgraded electrical system made it look like something built after the world had ended, not before. Leon did not mind being ignored. He minded the fuel gauge. They had 132 liters left. The armor had added weight. The improved suspension carried it easily, but the old engine still had to move it. Fuel consumption had increased to nearly 38 liters per 100 kilometers in heavy snow. Idling for heat was no longer necessary because the integrated generator and thermal system were efficient. But any long expedition would eat their reserve quickly. Victor made a chart on the back of an old route map. Current fuel, 132 liters. Minimum emergency reserve, 50. Usable for travel, 82. At current conditions, That gave them a practical safe radius of less than 100 kilometers if they wanted enough margin to return. Freedom, Victor said, tapping the figure, currently fits inside this circle. Leon studied the map. Maxim's freight terminal sat near the center of every major supply route south of Northgate. Commercial stations around it had been emptied or absorbed by his group. The city bus depot had fuel underground, but its electric pump remained damaged, and the attackers Leon and Victor had met were now camping nearby. The hospital had reserve diesel, but taking it would be murder by another name. Artem knew of one possibility. A construction company called Harker Civil maintained an emergency fuel yard near the river. It supplied excavators and snow equipment. According to old inventory records, the yard held 2 above-ground diesel tanks with a combined capacity of 24,000 liters. Victor's face brightened. Then, Artem finished. The company is owned by Volkov Logistics. Maxim's uncle bought it last year. The bright expression disappeared. Leon asked whether there were any smaller secondary yards. Artem thought for a moment and remembered a reserve service station used for highway maintenance on the Northeast Bypass. It was not part of Maxim's network. The place had a buried tank and a small workshop. Before the cold, crews used it for snowplows and road service trucks. How much? Leon asked. Last inventory I saw was around 2,800 liters. Maybe less now. That amount could change everything. The bypass station was 22 kilometers away. They planned the trip carefully. Lena packed medical supplies and thermal blankets. Victor loaded hand pumps, hoses, fuel filters, empty drums, and tools. Leon reduced non-essential cargo so they could carry at least 600 liters if they found it. Artem marked side roads that would let them avoid Maxim's terminal patrols. Before leaving, Leon checked the system. The power train was one of the last major red sections. Fuel pump, poor. Engine thermal management, poor. Primary tanks, aging. Filters, poor. Cold weather efficiency, low. Suggested materials included heavy-duty diesel pumps, industrial filtration, auxiliary tanks, cold weather seals, larger heat exchangers, and components from commercial diesel engines. Exactly the kind of equipment they might find at a highway service yard. The trip began well. North of the industrial district, traffic thinned. Snow was deeper, but the bus pushed through. Leon learned to keep momentum instead of fighting drifts from a stop. Victor taught him how to read the shape of wind-blown snow and avoid places where ditches disappeared beneath a smooth white surface. Lena sat near the front with a radio scanner. Artem sat behind her, counting roadside vehicles. Why? Lena eventually asked. Diesel candidates, Artem said. If we have to siphon on the return route. Leon glanced at him in the mirror. That's useful. For a while, the group functioned smoothly. Then they reached the Northeast Bypass and found tire tracks. Fresh ones. Victor leaned forward. Heavy trucks. 2, maybe 3. Leon reduced speed. Artem checked the map. Nobody should be out here. They found the first vehicle 5 kilometers later. A black 4-wheel drive sat beside the road with its engine running. Maxim's people. The driver saw the bus and immediately reached for a radio. Leon accelerated. The black vehicle pulled onto the road behind them. How did they know? Lena asked. Nobody answered. At that moment, there were several possibilities. They could have been followed from the city. Maxim might have known about the reserve station independently. One of his patrols could simply have found them by chance. Leon did not accuse anyone. The service station appeared ahead. A low concrete building beside 2 snowplows and a maintenance garage. One blue cargo truck was already parked outside. Not Maxim's usual black vehicles. Victor recognized the faded highway maintenance logo. Could be staff. Leon stopped 50 meters away and sounded the horn twice. A man emerged from the workshop holding a flare gun. 2 others followed. They wore road service uniforms beneath heavy coats. They were not Maxim's people. They were maintenance workers who had sheltered at the station since the storm began. Their tank still held about 1,900 liters. They had no intention of giving it away. Leon did not blame them. The station's generator depended on that diesel. The workers had 6 family members sheltering inside, including 2 children. The conversation lasted 10 tense minutes. Then the black 4-wheel drive arrived. 3 more vehicles followed it over the rise. Maxim had also come for the fuel. The road workers changed their position immediately. Leon went from potential thief to potential ally. The leader, a stocky man named Graham, said Maxim's group had visited the day before and offered protection in exchange for the entire reserve. Graham refused. They had expected him to return. He did, Leon said. Maxim himself was not present. The patrol leader was a hard-faced man named Doran, the same one who had supervised the earlier attempt to force Leon to the terminal. Doran spoke over a portable loudspeaker. He offered the road crew safe transport to the freight terminal. The fuel would be transferred to Maxim's storage. Leon and his bus would come as well. Nobody accepted. Doran gave them 5 minutes. Leon looked around the station. The building had thick concrete walls. The bus had armor. The road workers had 2 hunting rifles, the flare gun, and tools. Doran had 9 or 10 people, 4 vehicles, and at least 3 firearms. A direct gunfight would be stupid. Leon asked Graham where the fuel fill and pump controls were. Behind the building. Can they take the tank quickly? Not without our pump. Can they damage it? Yes. That was the danger. Doran wanted the fuel. But if the fight turned bad, a bullet or fire near the wrong equipment could destroy the resource everyone needed. Leon looked at the 2 large highway snowplows parked beside the garage. One had a dead engine. The other had a damaged hydraulic system, but could still move if started. Victor followed his gaze. No. Leon smiled slightly. You said you wanted to drive something. Not that. Coward. Victor's green eyes narrowed. Give me the keys. The plan was simple enough to survive contact with reality. The bus would remain visible near the main entrance. Doran already considered it the most valuable target. While his people focused on Leon, Victor would move the working snowplow through the rear maintenance lane. Graham's crew would use the second plow as a stationary barricade, protecting the fuel pump. Lena would stay inside the building with the families and medical supplies. Artem would help Graham at the pump controls. Leon asked Artem if he was comfortable with that. Artem looked through the window at armed men outside. No. Good answer. Can you still do it? After a pause, Artem nodded. The 5 minutes ended. Doran's first move was not a charge. He sent 2 vehicles slowly forward to pin the bus in place, while 3 men moved along the roadside ditch. Leon understood the tactic. They wanted him watching the vehicles while people approached for his blind side. The armored windows changed the balance. Leon no longer had to panic at every rifle barrel. He kept the engine running and waited. The first shot hit the windshield. A white mark appeared on the outer laminate. Nothing penetrated. Doran's men stopped advancing for a moment. Leon imagined their faces. The second shot struck a side panel and flattened. He used that moment to reverse toward the station building, forcing the 2 approaching vehicles to adjust. Then, Victor started the snowplow. Its diesel engine coughed, roared, and sent a cloud of gray exhaust across the rear yard. Doran heard it too late. Victor came around the side of the building with the plow blade low. He did not ram people. He rammed the lead pickup. The blade caught the pickup's front corner and shoved it sideways into a snowbank. The driver jumped out before the plow pinned the vehicle. The second pickup tried to reverse. Leon accelerated forward and blocked its escape angle with the bus. The pickup driver turned hard, skidded on ice, and struck the roadside barrier. Doran's people in the ditch opened fire. Rounds struck the bus body. One hit the snowplow cab and cracked a side window. Leon turned the bus to place its armored side between the ditch and the station entrance. That was the moment the bus stopped being only transport. It became a wall. Graham and another road worker moved behind it, staying low, and dragged the disabled plow into a better barricade position. Using a tow cable attached to the bus's reinforced rear point, Leon eased forward. The heavy machine shifted just enough to seal the approach to the fuel area. Doran realized the station could not be taken cleanly without damaging what he came for. He changed tactics. One of his men threw a bottle filled with burning fuel toward the bus. The bottle struck an armored side panel and burst. Flames spread across the exterior. Inside, Lena shouted over the radio. Leon saw the system register rising surface temperature, but no critical damage. The fire was frightening, but the bus's outer materials were not flammable. He drove forward through a pile of loose snow. The powder rolled over the burning side and smothered much of the flame. Victor laughed over the radio. "Your ugly house is learning tricks. Drive your plow." Jealous. Doran's last useful option was the black four-wheel drive parked on the approach road. He ordered it forward at speed, apparently intending to strike the bus's front quarter and spin it away from the entrance. Leon saw it coming. The old version of the bus might have lost a wheel. The C-rank frame could take more, but he did not need to absorb the hit. He waited until the vehicle committed, then accelerated and turned slightly into the snowbank beside the road. The black vehicle tried to correct. Its front tires lost grip. It slid past Leon's bumper and struck the concrete base of a light pole. Airbags exploded inside. Leon braked. The fight was over in less than 7 minutes. Nobody had been killed. 2 of Doran's men were injured, one with a broken arm and another with a cut from shattered glass. The road workers had 1 graze wound. Victor had glass in his sleeve, but no injury. Doran retreated because continuing would cost lives and risk the fuel. Before leaving, he stood beside his damaged vehicle and looked at Leon through the bus windshield. He made a radio call. Leon knew exactly who was on the other end. Maxim now knew the bus could resist gunfire. Graham offered Leon 400 liters of diesel as payment for helping defend the station. Leon refused the full amount. The workers needed fuel too. They settled on 250 liters, plus permission to salvage from the damaged maintenance vehicles and workshop. In exchange, Leon promised to carry a message to a larger shelter closer to the city and return with medicine if Lena could spare it. That trade mattered. Maxim ruled through control. Leon had just gained resources through cooperation. The difference would spread. Victor and Leon searched the maintenance garage while the fuel transfer ran. They found almost everything the powertrain upgrade needed. Heavy-duty pumps, industrial diesel filters, cold-resistant seals, heat exchangers, auxiliary fuel tanks, parts from a road grader engine, a compact fuel warming system used on snow equipment. They also found something Leon had wanted since the first morning, a large snowplow blade assembly designed for a heavy service truck. Victor placed both hands on it. "This is too heavy for the current front structure." The system agreed. The C-rank frame could support it after reinforcement, but the engine and front mounts would need integration. They loaded it anyway. Artem watched liters flow into the temporary drums and auxiliary tanks. For once, his nervous hands were still. "How much do we have now?" "About 370 usable, after the trip back," Leon said. Artem's relief was immediate. Then, Graham mentioned that Maxim controlled more than 30,000 liters at the freight terminal. Artem looked back toward the city. Leon saw the relief disappear. That evening, they returned to the furniture warehouse and began the largest mechanical integration yet. The system required Leon to make real connections. Fuel tanks had to be fixed to the chassis. Pumps had to be installed into the existing fuel route. The plow mounts had to be attached to reinforced frame points. Heat exchangers had to connect to the engine cooling circuit. Victor spent hours ensuring that the layout made physical sense before letting the system finish it. "I know your miracle can repair bad work," he told Leon, "but I refuse to become lazy in front of it." Leon appreciated that more than he said. Near midnight, everything was ready. Powertrain materials detected. Fuel capacity materials detected. Cold weather engine materials detected. Front utility attachment detected. Upgrade available. Leon accepted. The engine changed beneath the floor with a deep vibration. Old castings reinforced. Fuel pumps compacted into protected housings. Filters integrated in parallel, so one could clog without stopping the engine. The auxiliary tanks reshaped into armored low-mounted cells, totaling nearly 600 liters. Heat from the engine was routed through a controlled recovery loop. Fuel lines gained heaters. The cooling system enlarged and became far more precise. At the front, the heavy snowplow blade pulled tighter against the frame and reshaped into a broad, reinforced wedge that could lift or push snow without hanging too low over broken roads. The system updated. Powertrain, C rank. Current vehicle rank, B. Cold operation reliability, high. Fuel compatibility, expanded within diesel class and compatible heating oils. Estimated consumption under current load reduced by 42%. Operational range substantially increased. Leon read the last line twice. He had not received infinite fuel. He had received something better for the story of his life at that moment. Every liter he fought to obtain now carried him much farther. The next morning, he tested the bus on an unplowed industrial road. The engine no longer sounded like an old machine being persuaded to live. It produced a low, heavy pull from idle. Snow packed against the new front blade, rolled outward, and spilled away from both sides. The bus pushed through drifts that had reached the lower windows of abandoned cars. Victor sat in the passenger seat with his arms crossed. My turn. No, you promised maybe later. It is later. Leon looked at the empty road and sighed. They changed seats. Victor adjusted the mirrors with almost ceremonial care. Then he accelerated hard enough to make Lena shout from the rear. The heavy bus surged forward. Leon grabbed the dash. You criticized my driving? Victor's mustache lifted in a grin. Professionally. He drove 3 kilometers before Leon forced him out of the seat. When they returned, Artem had been listening to the radio. A transmission repeated on an emergency frequency. It was weak, partly buried in static, but the words were clear enough. Northern evacuation corridor remains active. Civilian movement beyond Sector 9 strongly discouraged. White zone temperatures below equipment tolerance. All conventional civilian vehicles should avoid northern corridor after sunset. Victor looked at the map. White zone? Lena adjusted the radio and caught another fragment. White zone night temperatures expected below -50 within 72 hours. Leon marked the frequency and wrote white zone beside the northern highway. Artem stared at him. We aren't going there. Leon folded the map. Nobody said we were. At that moment, it was true. They still had Northgate to survive. And Maxim Volkov had just lost a fuel station he believed should belong to him. 8 days passed after the fight at the highway station. During that stretch, the temperature slid below -40, and Northgate changed again. At -20, people still believed the crisis would end when power returned. At -30, they started moving into schools, warehouses, churches, underground parking structures, and any building with a working generator. At -40, people stopped expecting the city to return to normal soon. That difference could be seen in what they carried. Nobody dragged televisions anymore. Nobody guarded designer stores. Shopping carts held fuel cans, blankets, canned food, tools, batteries, propane cylinders, medicine, salt, and pieces of wood. Apartment doors stood open because frozen locks had split. Cars that had been worth years of salary sat beneath snow, while people stripped their batteries and walked away. The bus remained warm. Its value increased every hour. Their first trip after the highway station was not a profitable one. Leon carried Graham's message to the larger shelter he had promised to contact. Lena then released a small package of antibiotics, burn dressings, and fever medicine that the road crew had specifically requested, and Leon returned it to the station on their next southern run. Graham logged the delivery, gave Leon an updated road report, and treated the completed promise as part of their continuing trade rather than a favor. Leon's group began trading carefully with several shelters. They delivered medicine from a closed clinic Lena knew, transported 2 boxes of insulin to a hospital annex, and exchanged repair parts for food. Victor repaired a shelter generator in return for 80 liters of diesel and a crate of canned vegetables. Leon did not become a charity driver. He could not. Every trip had cost and risk. But he learned that a reputation for fair trades created options Maxim's threats did not. People started passing information to him. A warehouse on Mercer Street still had dry food. A construction crew had abandoned a heated equipment shed with 2 drums of diesel. The western overpass was blocked. Maxim's patrols were checking vehicles near the freight district. 2 shelters also reported that scheduled fuel deliveries from the terminal had arrived late because trucks had been reassigned to patrol the southern roads for Leon's bus. One of the names carried over the radio was Ellis, a senior terminal foreman who had argued that emergency deliveries should take priority over Maxim's private search. Ellis had proposed a rotating allocation board with shelter representatives and loading crews. Maxim rejected it. Another driver said even Doran had complained after the highway station fight that men and vehicles were being risked for operations that protected neither the terminal nor its fuel. Doran still followed orders, but the disagreement was no longer private. Information became another form of fuel. Inside the bus, life developed habits. Victor claimed the front right seat because he considered himself co-driver, even when Leon did not. Lena slept in the rear section beside the medical cabinets. Her wine-red braid usually disappeared under a wool cap when she went outside, but inside she let it hang over one shoulder while sorting medicine. Artem used a small folding desk near the center aisle and maintained their inventory in 3 notebooks because he did not trust electronics anymore. Leon slept nearest the driver's seat. He told everyone it was for security. Lena said it was because he liked waking up and checking whether the bus still existed. She was correct. One evening, Victor found Leon polishing ice from the front camera housing with a cloth. You know it cannot appreciate affection. Maintenance. You used a clean cloth. It's optics. Victor patted the dashboard. Ignore him, beautiful. He is emotionally unavailable. Leon turned. Did you just call my bus beautiful? No. I heard you. Cold damages hearing. Lena laughed from the kitchenette. Artem did not. He was staring at his inventory notebook. Leon noticed that more often now. Artem had become useful. He knew warehouse layouts and supply chains. He had helped them find food twice. During the station fight, he had stayed at the pump controls even while shots struck the bus outside. He was not useless or cowardly in the simple sense. But his fear had changed shape. He no longer asked whether they had enough food for tomorrow. He asked whether they had enough for a month. When Leon answered no, Artem asked, what happened if the roads closed? When Victor said the bus could move through most closures, Artem asked what happened if it broke. When Leon said they would repair it, Artem asked what happened if they could not. There was always another failure waiting in his imagination. The freight terminal represented the opposite of that fear. Maxim had fences, warehouses, generators, men with rifles, large food reserves, fixed walls. Artem saw stability. Leon saw a cage with a large fuel tank. Their disagreement surfaced after a trade at St. Rowan's School. The school's shelter manager offered Leon information about a medical shipment in exchange for transporting 6 people to a more secure district. Leon agreed because the destination was already on their route. Artem objected after the passengers left. They used our fuel. We got the clinic location. Information isn't food. The clinic has antibiotics, saline, and trauma supplies. If it hasn't been emptied, Lena closed one cabinet harder than necessary. Those supplies can keep someone alive. Artem rubbed his hands together. So can Diesel. Leon sat at the folding table across from him. What are you actually asking for? Artem hesitated. Then he said it. We should make a deal with Maxim. Victor looked up from a fuel filter he was cleaning. Artem continued quickly. He argued that Leon had leverage now. The bus was stronger. Maxim had seen it. They could negotiate from a better position. A guaranteed place at the freight terminal would give them fuel, food, guards, spare parts, and a fixed base. Leon asked, who would own the bus? Artem said ownership could be negotiated. No, Leon said. Artem's face tightened. You don't know that. He sent armed men to force us there. Then his people tried to take the highway station. I know enough. And how many more times can we fight them? That question silenced the bus. It was fair. Leon did not pretend otherwise. As many as we have to, until we can leave their territory. Artem stared through the reinforced window at the white street outside. Leave for where? Nobody answered immediately. The northern radio signal had become clearer. The military evacuation corridor still existed, but reports from the White Zone were worse each day. Night temperatures below -50. Vehicles frozen on the road. Civilian convoys turning back. The south was blocked by fuel-controlled regions and collapsed highways. The west held the largest remaining population centers and the worst congestion. East led into exposed farmland with almost no shelter. North was dangerous, but north was open. That uncertainty frightened Artem more than a bad decision would have. The following day, the group found the industrial materials that would later matter most. Victor remembered a company called Boreal Mining Systems on the southern industrial edge. It repaired Arctic excavation equipment used hundreds of kilometers farther north. If any place had cold-rated seals, high-strength panels, insulated hydraulic lines, and heavy frame components, it would be there. They visited only to scout. The factory was enormous. Most loading doors were frozen shut. Snow had blown through broken roof sections. Inside, rows of machines stood dark beneath emergency lights powered by a small backup system. They found composite armor panels used to protect mining cabins from rock impact. High-strength frame members, cold-resistant gaskets rated far below normal automotive parts. Heavy tow assemblies, industrial thermal insulation, components from tracked snow carriers. The system marked dozens of items as compatible. It also rejected an immediate upgrade. Current structural stage insufficient for full Arctic integration. Additional material mass exceeds present transport capacity. More importantly, he did not need it yet. Victor marked the building on the map. If the cold keeps dropping, we come back. Leon nodded. Artem looked around the dark factory and asked how much fuel a trip like that would consume. Nobody answered him. That night, someone transmitted their route to Maxim. Leon did not know it until the next morning. They had planned to visit a municipal water treatment annex for filter media and then trade medicine at a shelter near the Northern Ring Road. Only 4 people knew the route. The ambush waited exactly where the bus had to slow. A multi-lane interchange crossed a frozen drainage canal. Snowbanks rose along both sides. The central ramp narrowed between concrete barriers before descending to the northern road. Leon saw the first truck too late. A heavy box truck pulled sideways across the ramp ahead. Another moved behind them. 2 smaller vehicles appeared on the upper lanes. Victor's hand went to the radio. This is planned. Leon already knew. The bus could push through a normal car. The box truck ahead was loaded with concrete blocks. The system estimated impact risk to the front structure as severe. They could not simply ram it. Maxim's voice came over an open radio frequency. Leon, turn the engine off. Leon did not reply. I know what your bus can resist. I also know you have to get out eventually. Men moved along the concrete barriers carrying rifles. Others dragged portable spike strips toward the road. The bus's tires were reinforced, but Leon did not want to test them against industrial spikes while trapped between trucks. Maxim continued. Nobody needs to die. Your people can join us. You can keep a private cabin at the terminal. I need the vehicle and I need you operating it. Leon looked at the mirrors, 6 armed people visible. Maybe more behind the trucks. Maxim was not there personally. He was controlling the operation by radio. Doran stood near the front truck. This was not a robbery by nervous looters. They had studied the bus. Lena moved emergency bags into the center aisle. Victor checked the secondary controls. Artem was pale. Leon asked one question. How did they know the route? Artem's eyes moved toward him for half a second. That was enough. Leon felt something cold that had nothing to do with the weather. He did not confront Artem yet. There was no time. Doran's men pushed the first spike strip forward. Leon studied the interchange. The ramp beneath them curved slightly left. To the right, beyond the concrete barrier, the embankment dropped about 3 meters onto a lower service road beside the frozen canal. The slope was covered in deep snow. A normal bus would roll or bury itself. His bus was no longer normal, but the descent could still damage the undercarriage or trap them. Victor saw him looking. Absolutely not. You say that too often. Because you have too many ideas. Leon pointed through the side window. How deep is that snow? Victor estimated from the buried barrier posts. Maybe 1.5 meters in places. Enough to soften the drop. Maybe enough to swallow the front axle. We have the plow, Leon said. We also have gravity. Doran's men were 20 meters away. Leon engaged low-range traction support. He reversed 2 meters. Then turned sharply toward the right barrier. Maxim's voice came through the radio again. Do not be stupid. Leon finally answered. You keep saying that like it works. He accelerated. The reinforced plow struck the concrete barrier at an angle. The first impact shook the entire cabin. The barrier did not move. A warning flashed. Front mount load high. Leon reversed. Doran's men stared. Victor swore. Concrete is stronger than optimism. Leon had learned what he needed. He could not break the barrier directly. But 20 meters behind them, the barrier ended at a maintenance gap, blocked only by a steel swing gate. The men with rifles opened fire. Rounds struck side armor and glass. One shattered an exterior camera. Lena and Artem crouched low. The rear box truck began moving forward to close distance. Leon kept reversing. The bus's improved drivetrain gave him control, even on packed snow. He passed the maintenance gap, turned the front toward it, then drove forward before the rear truck could pin him. The steel gate was much weaker than concrete. The plow hit it at 15 kilometers per hour. The gate folded. The front wheels crossed the edge. For one terrible second, there was nothing under them. Then, the bus dropped into deep snow. Everyone slammed against belts and seats. The plow buried itself almost to the windshield. The rear wheels remained on the upper edge. The bus stopped at a steep angle. Victor looked at Leon. Excellent. We are now a building. Above them, Doran's men ran toward the gap. Leon tried forward power. The wheels spun. The system displayed traction overload. He backed off immediately. Spinning would dig them deeper. He looked at the snow ahead. The plow had packed a wall in front of the bus. They needed to create space, not more force. Victor, rear differential lock? Engaged. Can we raise front suspension? Victor checked the air controls. The system integration allowed limited ride height adjustment. They lifted the front several centimeters. Leon reversed gently, letting the bus settle backward onto firmer snow compressed by its own weight. Then he turned the plow angle to push snow toward the downslope side instead of straight ahead. Rifle rounds hit the roof edge. A side window showed another white impact mark. Lena called out that there was no penetration. Leon moved forward at idle. The plow shaved a layer of snow sideways. Reverse. Forward again. Each pass cleared half a meter. Doran reached the top of the slope and realized the bus might escape. He sent 2 men down on foot. They sank to their thighs immediately. Deep snow that trapped the bus trapped them even worse. Victor laughed once. Finally, being heavy is useful. The bus gained momentum. The front wheels climbed onto compacted snow. Leon kept the throttle steady, resisting the urge to floor it. The rear dropped off the upper edge with another violent jolt. A cabinet door burst open. Cans rolled across the floor. Artem cried out as one hit his ankle. But the bus was down. Leon turned along the service road. The lower route ran beneath the interchange and emerged 2 kilometers north. Maxim's vehicles could follow only by backing out of their own blockade and taking another ramp. Leon had minutes. He used them. The bus pushed through the drainage road at 30 kilometers per hour, plow throwing snow aside. A black vehicle eventually appeared on the upper parallel lane, but could not descend. The ambush vanished behind them. Only then did Leon stop. He parked beside a concrete pumping station and locked every door. Nobody spoke. Leon turned in his seat. Artem sat near the folding table, face colorless. Leon asked to see his radio. Artem did not move. Give me the radio. His hands began rubbing together. Lena looked from him to Leon. Victor understood first. You told them. Artem's eyes filled with panic. He said he had only sent one message. Maxim promised him a place at the terminal if he provided the route. Artem admitted that he had told them Leon could somehow rebuild the bus from salvaged parts, because that much was impossible to hide after living inside it. He had never seen Leon's interface, did not know the upgrade requirements, and had not given Maxim any way to reproduce the system. He thought they would stop the bus and negotiate. He did not think anyone would shoot. Leon stood, Artem backed against the table. I was trying to keep us alive. You gave armed men our route, because this cannot last. Look outside. We keep taking bigger risks. Every trip is another fight. Maxim has fuel. He has walls. He has people. And now he knows where our medical shelter contacts are because you heard the route. Did you tell him that too? Artem shook his head quickly. Leon believed him. Artem was frightened, not malicious. That did not make him safe. Victor wanted to leave him at the pumping station immediately. Lena argued that -40 made abandonment equivalent to a death sentence. Leon decided neither extreme was acceptable. They drove Artem to St. Rowan School, one of the shelters they had traded with. The shelter still had heat, guards, and over 100 residents. Leon gave the manager 2 bags of rice and asked him to take Artem in. Artem stood outside the bus with his backpack. He looked at the warm light through the reinforced windows. Maxim said there was a place for me. Leon looked at him from the doorway. Then why aren't his people here to pick you up? Artem said nothing. That answer hurt more than anger would have. Leon closed the door. The bus drove away. Through the rear camera, he watched Artem remain on the school steps until snow hid him from view. The ride away from St. Rowan was quiet. Artem had betrayed them. But he had also helped them through earlier dangers. And the empty seat in the middle of the bus made that contradiction difficult to ignore. An hour later, Victor inspected the damage. The frame had survived the drop, but one front suspension mount had taken a heavy shock. An exterior camera was destroyed. Several armor panels were dented, and the plow mount had reached its safe load twice. Leon had a dark seatbelt bruise across his left shoulder and upper ribs. Painful enough that Lena checked his breathing twice and made him promise to wake her if it worsened. The bus had survived, yet both the damage and Leon's bruising showed exactly where the next serious attack could hurt them. The radio crackled near Lena's seat. A northern emergency channel repeated a message through static. White zone convoy reduced to 17 operational vehicles. Night low, estimated -58. Heavy civilian traffic prohibited. Leon looked at the map, where the Boreal Mining Systems factory was circled in red. Victor followed his gaze. Now? Leon nodded. Maxim had changed tactics from capture to planned containment. The cold was changing faster than both of them. The bus needed its final upgrade. They reached Boreal Mining Systems at noon the next day. The outside temperature was -46. Leon had stopped thinking of numbers below -30 as weather. They were mechanical conditions now. At -46, rubber changed, lubricants thickened, batteries lost power, plastic became brittle. Skin exposed to wind for a few minutes could become an injury. Every task outside needed a reason and a timer. Lena set 12 minutes as the maximum work interval. Victor argued for 15. She stared at him until he accepted 10. The factory looked different from their scouting trip. Snow had blocked the main loading entrance. A section of roof near the west wing had collapsed, and the backup lights were gone. Leon parked the bus, nose first, against a sheltered service door, so nobody would need to cross open ground unnecessarily. The system showed what the final upgrade required: structural reinforcement, extreme cold sealing, impact-resistant exterior composite, redundant thermal loops, heavy recovery equipment, protected air intake, enhanced underbody protection. Nothing on that list was magical. It was the same bus being prepared for a harsher environment. Victor had marked exact equipment during their earlier visit. They started with the composite cabin panels stored in the North Hall. Moving them was harder than finding them. Each panel weighed more than 2 men could safely carry. The factory's overhead crane had no power. A battery forklift remained in the loading bay, but its cells were frozen nearly dead. Leon connected the bus's external power line to the forklift. Through a converter, Victor assembled. They warmed the battery housing with portable heaters for 20 minutes before attempting a start. The forklift came alive slowly. Victor drove. Leon guided the load. Lena remained near the bus and watched their timers. They moved 4 panels before the first real problem. The roof above the north hall made a long cracking sound. Victor stopped immediately. Snow had accumulated on one side of the damaged roof. A steel support column leaned several degrees away from vertical. Leon looked at the remaining panels. The system marked them as ideal. Lena saw him looking. No, we need at least 2 more. Then find 2 that are not under a roof, trying to become a floor. Victor agreed with her. Leon hated it, but they were right. They abandoned the North Hall and searched the vehicle assembly wing instead. That decision delayed them nearly an hour, but led to something better. An unfinished Arctic hauler sat on maintenance stands with its exterior cabin partly removed. Its panels were smaller, easier to move, and included cold-rated seals around doors and windows. The system accepted them. Victor found heavy cross members beside the hauler. Leon found thermal blankets and insulation designed around hydraulic equipment. Lena discovered a locked emergency storeroom with respirators, chemical warming packs, cold weather gloves, and sealed meal bars. They took enough for their own needs and left the rest marked on the shelter network frequency. Leon had learned that emptying every site was poor strategy. Information shared with other groups created people willing to share information later. The 4th component came from a tracked snow carrier in the rear yard. It had a recovery winch rated far above the bus's current equipment. Leon wanted it integrated into the front and rear structure. The system agreed, but they had to remove it first. Wind had risen. Snow moved across the ground in dense ribbons. Leon and Victor crawled beneath the carrier with impact tools powered from the bus. Bolts that should have released easily had frozen solid. Victor heated the mounting block carefully, while Leon worked the driver. Lena called them inside. Victor said they needed 2 more minutes. Lena counted 30 seconds over the radio. They ignored her. At 40 seconds, she switched off the external power from inside the bus. Leon's impact tool died. Did she just cut us off? Victor sighed. I like her. They crawled back inside. Lena handed both men hot drinks and checked their fingers. Leon complained that the bolt was almost free. She told him it would still be almost free after he had sensation in his hands. On the 2nd attempt, they removed the winch. The 5th requirement was underbody protection. Boreal used replaceable high-strength skid sections under tracked vehicles to survive rock impacts. Leon loaded as many as the bus could carry. By late afternoon, the aisle was full of equipment. The system still showed one missing category: redundant thermal circulation. Victor knew where to find it. The factory's test chamber used multiple pumps and heat exchangers to simulate Arctic operating conditions. The chamber was on the far side of the collapsed west wing. The shortest corridor was blocked. The longer route passed through the chemical storage area. Lena warned them that damaged industrial chemicals could be more dangerous than the cold. They went carefully. Halfway through the storage area, Victor stopped. He smelled fuel. Not diesel, solvent. A drum had cracked when shelving collapsed. Liquid had spread across the floor and partly frozen. The vapor was faint in the cold, but still flammable. Leon immediately turned off his flashlight's high-power setting and avoided the damaged area. They detoured through an office mezzanine, crossing above the spill rather than through it. That detour put them inside the test chamber control room. The pumps were still there. So were 2 compact heat exchangers and insulated circulation lines. They removed everything they needed. On the way back, the building shifted again. A section of ceiling dropped behind them with a crash. The passage to the service entrance disappeared beneath steel framing. They were separated from the bus by less than 30 meters and several tons of debris. Lena's voice came through the radio immediately. Status. Leon told her they were unhurt. Victor examined the debris. They could climb over some of it, but a bent roof beam had pinned the lower section. Trying to crawl beneath would be dangerous if the roof shifted again. The temperature inside the unheated factory was almost the same as outside. Their safe time was limited. Leon looked through a broken side door. The bus sat outside, partly visible around the corner of the building. There was another loading door 10 meters from their position, but a snowdrift and a steel storage rack blocked the exterior side. Leon called Lena and told her to move the bus. She had driven ambulances, but never something this size. Victor gave instructions over radio. Lena started the bus, reversed slowly, and brought it around the west side. The rear camera was damaged, so she relied on mirrors and Leon's directions. She stopped in front of the blocked loading door. Leon attached a chain from the inside to the storage rack visible through the gap. Lena connected the bus's rear tow point. Slow pull, Victor said over radio. No shock load. The bus moved. The chain tightened. The rack scraped through packed snow. It shifted 20 centimeters, then 50. The loading door bent outward enough for Leon to force the emergency latch. Lena backed farther. The rack came free. Leon and Victor emerged, carrying the final heat exchanger as snow whipped around them. Lena opened the door. Warm air rolled out. Leon climbed inside and immediately smelled soup. He stared at the kitchenette. Lena had used the weight to heat lunch. We were trapped in a collapsing factory. You were trapped for 11 minutes. You made soup. You are welcome. Victor took the first bowl. Excellent rescue operation. Leon sat down, accepted the second bowl, and stopped complaining. They could not safely perform the final installation inside the unstable factory. They moved to a concrete truck maintenance shelter 2 kilometers away and spent the evening attaching materials. The upgrade was too large for improvised work. Victor organized it in stages. First, underbody skid plates and cross members. Second, the new composite panels fixed over critical exterior sections. Third, seals around doors, windows, vents, and service hatches. Fourth, redundant circulation pumps and heat exchangers. Fifth, the recovery winch mounted through real structural points front and rear. Sixth, protected intake and exhaust routing. Leon worked until his shoulders ached. Lena cleaned a cut on Victor's palm and forced both men to eat. Near midnight, the system finally displayed full compatibility. Current vehicle rank B. Upgrade target. A rank Arctic Mobile Fortress. Leon paused. The jump from B to A was larger than previous upgrades. He authorized integration. The bus began to change. The floor vibrated first as the underbody structure pulled into place. New cross members integrated with existing reinforcement. The outer composite panels thickened and spread over vulnerable zones while retaining service access. Door seals rebuilt themselves into double barriers. The heated windows gained stronger frames and secondary interior shutters. Thermal lines duplicated themselves into 2 independent loops, one able to keep the cabin warm if the other failed. Air intakes moved higher and gained snow separators. The front plow mount reinforced into the frame. Recovery winches settled behind armored housings. The suspension adjusted to the new weight. The engine control changed to match it. Inside, insulation thickened in the walls and ceiling. Storage compartments became more efficient. The water system gained freeze protection. Electrical cables rerouted into protected channels. Emergency lighting appeared low along the floor. When the process ended, the silence felt strange. Leon stepped outside. He had to walk several meters away to see the whole machine. The bus was still recognizable. That mattered to him. The long body, broad windshield shape, and faded patches of original blue remained. But almost everything around them had evolved. The lower body was wrapped in dark composite protection. The wheels sat beneath reinforced arches. The front carried a brutal snow wedge integrated with the frame. The windows looked narrower and deeper. Recovery points were visible, front and rear. Exterior lights sat behind protective grids. It looked less like a bus someone had armored, and more like a vehicle that had been designed from the beginning to survive a frozen world. The system displayed its new condition. Current vehicle rank. A. Extreme cold operation. High. Impact resistance. High. Thermal redundancy. High. Mobility in deep snow. High. External fuel requirement remains. Food supply remains external. Operator vulnerability outside vehicle remains unchanged. Leon liked that the system reminded him of the last line. Lena liked it more. Victor walked around the bus in silence. Leon folded his arms. Well? Victor touched the front armor. I have a complaint. Of course. The paint is still terrible. Leon looked at the faded blue strip trapped between armored panels. Keeps it humble. They spent the night in the maintenance shelter. At 3 in the morning, the temperature outside reached -51. Inside the bus, with the main engine off and thermal system running on the integrated generator, the cabin held +22. Leon woke once, checked the display, and went back to sleep. At dawn, they received 3 radio messages. The first came from St. Rowan School. Maxim's people had approached the shelter, asking for Artem. He had left with them voluntarily during the night. The second came from a mechanic at another shelter. Maxim was moving heavy trucks and road equipment from the freight terminal toward the southern industrial routes. The third was broadcast publicly by Maxim himself. He accused Leon of stealing fuel, attacking workers, and destabilizing emergency supply networks. He announced that the armored bus was considered hostile and should be stopped if seen approaching the freight district. Victor listened, with his eyebrows raised. He finally stopped trying to buy it. Leon looked at the map. Their current shelter route back north passed within 3 kilometers of the freight terminal. Alternative roads were blocked by collapsed power lines and a rail crossing buried under snow. They could take a long eastern detour, but fuel and time would be wasted, and 2 shelters were expecting medical deliveries Leon had promised. Maxim knew that. The earlier ambush had been designed to capture the bus. The next one would be designed to stop it permanently. Leon started the engine. Victor sat beside him. Lena secured the cabinets and checked every seatbelt. The A-rank bus rolled out into -51 degrees, as if it were a cold morning instead of the end of the world. Maxim had walls, trucks, rifles, and heavy machinery. Leon had spent nearly 3 weeks turning his home into something built to go through walls. Maxim chose the freight approach because he understood logistics. The terminal still had one advantage ordinary shelters did not. Its main loading halls retained enough waste heat from generators to keep selected trucks and road machines above deep freeze, and its crews treated fuel for extreme cold. Equipment rolled out warm could work for a limited operation at -52. It could not spend half a night crossing the city and expect every seal, battery, and fuel line to survive. Leon understood the distinction, and he knew Maxim would use that short operational window aggressively. That was also why Leon understood the trap the moment he saw it. The southern route into central Northgate narrowed between the freight terminal on one side and a frozen rail yard on the other. 4 lanes became 2 before passing beneath a concrete railway bridge. Beyond the bridge, the road opened toward the northern districts and the shelters waiting for Lena's medicine. It was the only practical route for a vehicle as large as the bus. Maxim had turned it into a gate. 2 loaded dump trucks stood nose to nose across the main lanes. Shipping containers had been dragged behind them. A wheel loader waited near the left shoulder with its bucket lowered. On the right, road crews had cut away snow to expose a drainage trench too deep for a normal vehicle to cross. Men occupied the terminal wall and the bridge approach. Leon slowed 150 meters away. The radio crackled. Maxim's voice was calm. "Stop there." Leon kept the engine idling. The outside display read -52. Inside, +21. Victor studied the blockade through binoculars. Loaded trucks. Rear axles sitting low. Containers probably weighted too. Lena pointed toward the road surface between them and the barrier. Something on the snow. Leon zoomed the front camera. Rows of dark metal teeth had been spread across both lanes. Heavy tire spikes. The new wheel assemblies were stronger than before, but the system did not describe them as invulnerable. A puncture might not stop the bus immediately, yet multiple damaged tires in front of armed men was exactly the kind of test Leon did not want. Maxim came onto the radio again. "Your vehicle is impressive. I admit that. You made your point. Now turn the engine off and step outside. Lena and Victor can leave. You can stay alive if you cooperate." Victor leaned toward the radio. Very generous. Leon stopped him from transmitting. He was studying the snow. Wind had covered parts of the road since the spikes were placed. Their locations were visible because Maxim's people had cleared a clean strip around them. The trap depended on Leon staying between the painted lanes. The A-rank mobility system did not care about painted lanes. To the far right, the drainage trench ran beside the road for about 60 meters before ending near a maintenance access ramp. The shoulder above it was piled with nearly 2 meters of plowed snow. Beyond that mound was a strip of frozen gravel between the road and a warehouse fence. A normal bus could not climb the snow berm without burying its front end. This bus had been built for deep snow 12 hours earlier. Maxim saw the expression through the windshield from somewhere on the terminal side and misunderstood it. Last chance. Leon finally touched the radio. No. Then stay out of the road. Leon turned right. The bus left the pavement. The front plow struck the snow berm at an angle. Instead of trying to climb straight over it, Leon drove along its face, shaving snow away in a rolling wave. The reinforced wedge threw powder across the shoulder and slowly cut a ramp upward. Men on the wall began shouting. Maxim had expected a ram against the dump trucks. He had positioned the spikes for a frontal approach. He had not expected Leon to spend 30 seconds making his own road. The bus climbed. Its front rose until Leon saw only white through the lower half of the windshield. The traction system shifted power between the drive wheels. The new suspension lifted the front slightly. Snow rolled beneath the underbody armor. For a moment, the bus hung at an angle steep enough that Lena gripped the seat frame. Then, the front wheels reached the frozen gravel strip beyond the berm. The rear followed. They were past the first spike field. Maxim reacted quickly. The wheel loader turned away from the blockade and accelerated along the inside service lane to intercept them. It was a massive machine, heavier than the bus at the front axle and built to push tons of material. Its steel bucket rose to window height. Victor saw it coming. That can hurt us, Leon agreed. The loader did not need to destroy the armor. It only needed to pin the bus against the fence while riflemen surrounded them. Leon increased speed. The gravel lane was narrow. Fence on the right, snow berm on the left. The loader approached head-on. At 40 meters, Leon did not slow. At 30, the loader driver raised the bucket, preparing to strike the upper front corner. At 20, Leon turned sharply left and drove back into the snow berm. Victor shouted. The bus climbed halfway onto the soft snow, leaning left. The loader driver had expected a collision. He corrected too late. His right wheels ran close to the warehouse fence, while the bus's armored side slid past his raised bucket with less than half a meter of clearance. The bucket scraped the rear quarter and tore off an exterior storage cover. The impact shook the cabin, but the loader had passed them. Its driver braked on frozen gravel. The rear of the heavy machine swung sideways and struck the fence. Leon dropped back onto the gravel lane and continued forward. You planned that? Lena asked. Most of it. Which part wasn't planned? The scraping sound. Victor looked at the damaged camera. That was the expensive part. They reached the end of the gravel strip, where the drainage trench closed near the maintenance ramp. Maxim had a second defense waiting. A heavy tractor unit held one end of a steel cable across the ramp, while the other end was fixed to a concrete bridge anchor. The cable was low enough to catch the bus near the plow, and high enough to damage front equipment if Leon hit it at speed. Behind them, the loader had recovered and was turning around. Men with rifles moved along the terminal wall, trying to get ahead. Leon stopped 10 meters short of the cable. For the first time, Maxim's people cheered. They thought the bus was trapped. Victor looked at the front recovery system. We could winch one anchor if someone attaches the line. That meant going outside under rifle fire. Leon rejected it immediately. Lena pointed toward the tractor, holding one side of the cable. Is that parked or braked? Victor studied it. The tractor was angled on ice. Its rear wheels were chained, but the trailer coupling was empty. The cable had been looped through a heavy towing point at the front. Park brake, probably. Why? Leon looked at the snow piled along the tractor's downhill side. He reversed 20 meters. Then he turned the plow toward the snowbank and pushed. The bus gathered a wall of dense snow in front of itself. Instead of clearing the road, Leon pushed the mass sideways against the tractor's front wheels. Snow packed beneath the chassis and around the chain tires. The tractor shifted several centimeters. The cable slackened. Leon reversed and did it again. Rifle rounds struck the bus. A concentrated burst hit one front window. The outer laminate starred with white marks, but held. The loader was returning behind them. "One more," Victor said. Leon pushed another heavy wave of snow into the tractor. The tractor slid sideways on the ice. The cable sagged to the ground. Leon drove over it before the loader reached them. The front wheels crossed the maintenance ramp. The rear wheels followed. They were back on the main road beyond the spike trap. The dump truck blockade was now behind them. But Maxim had prepared for that too. A second line of containers blocked the road beneath the railway bridge. This one left no shoulder. Concrete bridge support stood on both sides. 3 containers were positioned in a shallow V, their corners chained together. Doran stood in front of them, with 6 armed men. Beside him stood Artem. Leon braked. Lena went still. Artem was not restrained. He wore a heavy gray coat Leon had never seen before, and a terminal identification band around one sleeve. Maxim's voice returned over radio. "You have nowhere else to go." Leon looked at Artem through the windshield. Artem could not hold his gaze. Maxim had given him what he wanted. A place inside the terminal. Food, walls, fuel. And now he was standing outside those walls at -52 because Maxim needed someone who knew Leon. The irony did not need explanation. Doran lifted a loudspeaker and ordered Leon to exit. The men around him spread out instead of bunching together. They knew bullets would not easily penetrate the bus. Their real target was the door, if it opened, the engine intake, if they could damage it, or Leon himself, if he stepped out. Leon stayed seated. He asked Victor one question. "Containers empty?" Victor studied the way they sat on the suspensionless ground. Not empty, but not full. If they were full, they would be lower in the snow. Can we move them? With a plow? Maybe 1, not 3 chained together. Leon examined the chain. The system camera zoomed enough to show that the containers were connected through their corner castings. The weakest part was not the steel boxes. It was the snow beneath them. The containers had been dragged into place less than an hour earlier. Under each sat packed road snow over ice. Leon backed away. Doran's people raised weapons. Leon did not charge. He turned the bus slightly and began clearing snow from the left side of the road. Victor understood first. "You're digging." Leon nodded. The plow cut a channel along the left container's base. Snow rolled away from its lower corner. Leon reversed and cut again, deeper this time. Doran shouted for the men to shoot the plow hydraulics. Rounds struck the armored front assembly. One exterior hydraulic line warning flashed yellow, then cleared, as the redundant protected system shifted pressure. Now, the left container had less support on one side. He moved to the opposite edge and pushed a heavy mass of snow against its other side. The container shifted. Only a few centimeters. The chain went tight. The middle container moved with it. Victor grinned. Again, Leon reversed. Doran realized the blockade was moving. He ordered the tractor unit from behind to push the containers back into position, but the maintenance ramp and disabled loader delayed it. Leon hit the snow mass again. The left container slid across ice. The V opened slightly. Not enough for the bus. A rifle round struck an exterior sensor and killed the left front camera. Another damaged one of the outer lights. Leon kept working. Maxim's voice lost its calm for the first time. "Doran, stop him." Doran moved closer with 2 men carrying a heavy chain. They intended to attach it to the bus's front plow and anchor it to the bridge support. They had to approach within a few meters to do that. Leon waited. When Doran stepped into the cleared lane, Leon sounded the bus horn. The integrated air horn blasted beneath the bridge with a force that made every man outside flinch. Leon accelerated 2 meters. Not enough to hit anyone. Enough to make them jump backward. Then he turned the plow and shoved another wave of snow against the weakened container. The left box slid nearly a meter. The chain dragged the middle one sideways. A gap opened. Victor measured it with his eyes. "We can fit if you don't care about paint." Leon looked at him. Have you seen the paint? Doran's men scattered. The bus entered the gap. The right armor scraped the middle container. The left side ground against the shifted box. Metal screamed along both sides. The opening was too narrow by perhaps 10 centimeters. Leon kept moving. The A-rank frame took the compression. The containers shifted on the ice. One chain snapped with a sound like a gunshot. The bus burst through. Doran fell backward into the snow. Artem remained standing near the bridge wall. For 1 second, Leon and Artem were almost level, separated by reinforced glass. Artem raised a hand. Leon did not stop. He drove past. The road north was open. Behind them, something changed at the freight terminal. The radio channel filled with arguments. Workers had watched 2 attempts to stop the bus fail. They had watched Maxim commit trucks, fuel, men, and heavy equipment to a personal conflict, while shelters were begging for deliveries. More importantly, Doran's people had fired repeatedly around loaded fuel vehicles and storage infrastructure. This was no longer one sudden mutiny. For days, loading crews had heard Ellis argue for shared allocation, while delayed shelters asked where their fuel trucks were. They had heard Doran question operations that spent equipment without securing supplies. Maxim had kept authority because he still seemed like the person most capable of keeping the terminal organized. The road battle was destroying that argument in public. Leon recognized the next voice from the reports passed between shelters. The terminal foreman Ellis came onto the shared emergency frequency and demanded Maxim stop the operation. Maxim ordered him off the channel. Ellis refused. Then another. Leon did not need to conquer the terminal. Maxim's control had depended on convincing everyone that only obedience could keep the supplies organized and safe. The more resources he spent trying to capture one bus, the weaker that argument became. Maxim made his final mistake 3 kilometers later. He came himself. A heavy dump truck appeared from a parallel terminal exit and entered the road ahead of Leon. Maxim's black vehicle followed behind it. The dump truck carried gravel and salt for traction, enough weight to make it a serious obstacle. It stopped sideways on a bridge over the frozen canal. There was no shoulder, no snow berm to climb. Concrete barriers boxed the road. The black vehicle parked behind the dump truck. Maxim stepped out. He had finally created the kind of blockade Leon could not simply drive around. The bus stopped 50 meters away. Maxim walked forward alone until 20 meters separated them. His black coat snapped in the wind. Even at -52, he tried to look composed, but frost had formed along his collar, and his face was pale. Leon lowered the driver's window only a few centimeters. Maxim shouted over the wind, "You think this is about pride?" Leon said nothing. Maxim pointed back toward the terminal. He said hundreds of people depended on organized fuel distribution. Leon's independent trades undermined rationing. Shelters were bargaining against one another. Workers were stealing. Armed groups were taking reserves. Maxim believed someone had to control the supply chain before the city destroyed itself. Some of that was true. That was what made him better than a simple bandit. Leon answered that control did not require owning everyone who had something useful. Maxim laughed once. "Your bus exists because you take what you need from a dying city. Do not pretend you are different." Leon looked at the medicine cases strapped behind Lena's seat, at Victor's repair tools, at the food they had traded for, at the radio notes from shelters that warned one another about open roads. "I trade until somebody refuses, then I leave." Leave. Leon almost smiled. The dump truck filled most of the road, but not all of it. Its cab sat near the left barrier. Its rear body extended across the right lane. The truck's rear wheels were close to the bridge centerline. The bed was loaded. That made it heavy. It also made the center of mass high. Victor studied it through the windshield and quietly said, "Front axle angle." Leon saw it. The truck had been parked sideways on a road crowned slightly in the center for drainage. Its front wheels were turned toward Leon, but the rear wheels sat lower on a layer of wind-blown ice. Leon did not need to push the entire truck off the bridge. He only needed to rotate it enough to open one lane. Maxim returned to his black vehicle. The dump truck driver remained inside. Leon locked the bus doors. Lena secured herself. Victor tightened his belt. This will hurt the paint. Tragic. Leon backed up 100 meters. The dump truck driver started his engine and braced. Maxim understood what Leon intended and ordered him forward. The dump truck moved toward the center of the road, trying to straighten and become a stronger head-on barrier. That was exactly when Leon accelerated. The bus's powertrain pulled hard, 20 kilometers per hour, 30. The reinforced plow lowered slightly. The dump truck was still turning. Leon did not aim at the center. He aimed at the rear wheel area, on the downhill side. The plow struck the truck's rear quarter at an angle. The impact was enormous. Everyone inside the bus jerked against belts. A warning flashed across the windshield display. Front structural load severe. The bus slowed violently, but did not stop. Its tires kept pushing. The dump truck's rear wheels slid across the ice. The driver accelerated, trying to counter the rotation. The front wheels found grip. The rear did not. The truck pivoted. Leon backed off before the bus became trapped against it. The gap opened by half a lane. Not enough. Maxim's black vehicle moved forward from behind the truck, trying to block the new angle. Leon expected that. He reversed again, but only 30 meters this time. The black vehicle accelerated toward him. Maxim was inside now. He intended to strike Leon's damaged front corner while the bus was recovering. The earlier bus would have avoided the hit. The A-rank bus did not need to. Leon turned slightly, so the black vehicle struck the reinforced plow edge instead of the wheel. The collision destroyed the front of Maxim's vehicle. Its hood folded. Airbags fired. The lighter vehicle spun and struck the concrete barrier. The bus moved less than a meter. Leon checked the camera. Maxim's door opened. He climbed out, stunned but alive. Leon accelerated toward the dump truck a second time. This time, the driver abandoned it and jumped down onto the far side of the bridge. The bus hit the rear quarter again. The truck rotated another meter. Its front bumper struck the opposite barrier. A narrow lane opened between the dump body and the concrete wall. Victor looked at it. That is too narrow. Leon drove forward. You said that about the containers. I was right then, too. The bus squeezed through. The right armor scraped concrete. The left plow edge pushed against the dump truck body. The truck shifted a final few centimeters. Then, the bus was passed. Leon stopped on the far side of the bridge. He could have kept going. Instead, he opened the emergency radio channel. He addressed the terminal workers, not Maxim. He told them St. Rowan needed fuel. The Western Hospital Annex needed fuel. The highway station had people willing to trade. The northern shelters needed deliveries before the temperature dropped again. If the terminal wanted to remain a logistics center, it should act like one, instead of a private fortress. Ellis answered first. Ellis did not claim personal command. He invoked the allocation board he had already been trying to organize with loading crews, maintenance chiefs, and shelter representatives. Enough terminal staff answered on the shared channel to put it into effect. Until a broader emergency authority could be restored, they would distribute reserves through that board. Maxim's private security authority was suspended. Maxim shouted into another radio channel, ordering Doran to arrest Ellis. Doran did not answer. A minute later, someone else did. We're done, Maxim. It was Doran. Maxim had spent his authority on a private battle while shelters waited for deliveries, and the people who kept the terminal running had watched every decision. Leon had survived long enough for the terminal crews to decide that they no longer wanted Maxim making those decisions for them. Maxim stood beside his wrecked black vehicle on the bridge as the bus moved away. He was alive. He still had a coat, a weapon, and people who might help him if he accepted that he no longer controlled them. Leon did not care what choice he made next. The road was open. 2 hours later, Leon delivered Lena's medicine to the northern shelter. Victor helped repair its generator. A freight terminal truck arrived before sunset, carrying 800 liters of diesel, heating oil, and food under a new distribution agreement. The driver handed Leon a sealed note from Ellis. It contained one sentence. You broke 2 road barriers and 1 dump truck. We are charging you for none of them, if you stay out of our loading bay. Victor read it and nodded seriously. Reasonable man. Leon folded the note. He has no appreciation for transportation innovation. That night, the storm warning changed again. Expected low, -60. Northgate had run out of numbers that sounded survivable. The bus had one final opponent left. The cold arrived after midnight. The wind came first. It rolled over Northgate from the north, with enough force to fill cleared streets in minutes. Snow erased tire tracks behind moving vehicles. Visibility fell below 20 meters. Emergency radio operators told everyone to stop traveling. Leon was already moving. The northern shelter where they had delivered medicine sat in an exposed school complex. Its heating system depended on 2 generators, one of which failed just before midnight. The remaining unit could keep a small section of the building above freezing, but not enough for all the residents. Ellis said 2 freight trucks with fuel. One stopped after 6 kilometers when its fuel system began freezing. The second made it 9 before electrical problems killed the engine. Leon's bus kept going. Outside temperature? -54, then -56. The protected intakes separated blowing snow. Fuel heaters kept diesel flowing. Redundant thermal loops held the cabin at +22. The front plow carved a path through drifts that reached above the wheel hubs. Victor watched engine temperatures. Lena prepared the rear section for evacuees. Leon drove by camera and marker poles when the road disappeared completely. At -58, one exterior light failed. The system isolated it. At -59, ice built up around the front plow hinge. The integrated heaters cleared it slowly. At -60, the bus crossed a road where every other vehicle had stopped. Some still had hazard lights blinking weakly. Most were dark. Leon passed a modern 4-wheel drive abandoned, with all 4 doors open. A family had left it and walked to a nearby apartment block because the engine died. Victor looked at the outside temperature, and then at the old faded blue strip, still visible above the armored dashboard. Dobbs sold you this thing for how much? Leon told him. Victor shook his head. Robbery. I know. No, you robbed him. The bus parked directly against the main entrance, while shelter staff moved the most vulnerable residents aboard in groups. Elderly people. Children. 2 patients on oxygen. A woman recovering from surgery. They did not evacuate everyone. The remaining generator could keep one central hall warm, and Ellis had another repair crew coming. The bus became a temporary heated ward. Lena worked the aisle, checking hands, breathing, and blood pressure. Victor monitored power draw. Leon kept the engine at the most efficient operating level, while snow accumulated against the lower armor. A little boy sitting near the front stared at the cabin thermometer. Is it really -60 outside? Leon said yes. The boy looked around at people wearing sweaters instead of coats. Why isn't it cold in here? Victor answered before Leon could. Because he improved it a little. Leon turned slowly. Lena laughed. Even the boy understood there was a joke he had missed. They remained at the school for 3 hours until the replacement generator arrived behind a tracked utility vehicle. By then, the wind had begun to ease. The bus had consumed fuel. It had taken exterior damage from ice and debris. One light remained dead. Nothing important had failed. By dawn, calling it a mobile fortress no longer felt exaggerated. The broken bus had become the safest mobile base in Northgate. 3 weeks earlier, Leon had slept inside wearing 2 coats because the heater barely produced warm air. Now he stood in the aisle, wearing a dark sweater, while frost covered the outside of armored windows thick enough to stop bullets. The contrast felt absurd, even to him. When morning came, the storm left a city shaped by snow. Cars had disappeared beneath drifts. Streets ended abruptly in white walls. Several building roofs had collapsed. The freight terminal remained active, but its gates were open to shelter convoys now. Ellis had created a rotating fuel committee with representatives from the largest surviving districts. It was messy, argumentative, and slower than Maxim's orders. It also meant people could refuse him without being threatened. Maxim himself survived the bridge collision. Leon heard that he had returned to the terminal on foot and been treated for a fractured wrist. He no longer controlled security. Doran remained as part of the terminal defense only after agreeing to answer to the new committee. Leon did not visit. Artem sent a message through St. Rowan 2 days later. He asked whether he could return. Leon read it twice. Lena asked what he would say. Leon wrote that Artem could trade with them, travel with shelter convoys, and ask for help in an emergency. He could not live on the bus again. Leon treated trust like any other critical supply. It could be rebuilt, but not quickly enough to risk the lives of everyone sleeping inside the bus. Artem accepted the answer. By the end of the week, the bus carried a stable reserve of fuel, food for several weeks, medical supplies, tools, spare filters, and emergency clothing. Ellis provided fuel in exchange for Leon making difficult deliveries to shelters ordinary trucks could no longer reach. Leon accepted only routes that made sense. The bus was powerful, not magical, and every kilometer still consumed something. Victor kept improving normal maintenance routines, even though the system could integrate materials. He insisted they carry spare fluids, hoses, seals, tools, and manual recovery gear. Miracle or not, he said, a machine deserves respect. Lena added medical protocols beside Leon's door rules. The original sign still read, "Clear snow from your boots. Close the door." Beneath it, Victor had restored his line, "The owner becomes emotional about heat." Leon stopped crossing it out. One quiet afternoon, he found Victor wiping the dashboard with a clean cloth. "Are you talking to the bus again?" Victor did not look up. "No. I heard you call it beautiful. We are inside. Old, cold damage. Permanent. Very sad." Lena nearly dropped a box of bandages, laughing. Northgate was still in crisis. The grid remained down. The weather kept worsening, and every shelter had to calculate fuel and food against the next cold night. People still died when generators failed or travel went wrong. Leon's own problem had changed completely. He had once needed any roof he could afford. Now, his home could cross a frozen city, turn snow into clean water, hold safe temperatures in lethal cold, resist armed attacks, and open roads that ordinary vehicles could no longer use. It moved where he chose and belonged to him alone, and the system still showed one line that bothered him. Current vehicle rank, A. Leon had seen it every day since the Boreal upgrade. He had never seen the next rank requirements. Then the northern radio changed. The transmission came at 0640 in the morning. Lena was making tea. Victor was asleep in the passenger seat with his arms folded. Leon was checking fuel records when the emergency receiver came alive. The signal was stronger than before. Northern Evacuation Command, calling all surviving heavy transport. White Zone Convoy has 6 operational vehicles remaining. Road surface conditions critical. Night temperatures below -70. Conventional wheeled vehicles experiencing complete failure. Any transport capable of sustained operation below -60 is requested to respond. Victor opened one eye. Lena stopped pouring water. Leon turned up the volume. The message repeated. A map coordinate followed. It was north of Northgate, beyond the last normal highway service area, directly inside the white zone they had been hearing about for more than a week. Victor sat upright. "No." Leon looked at him. "You don't even know what I was going to say. I have learned your face." Lena unfolded the regional map across the table. The white zone covered a broad section of highway leading toward the northern evacuation corridor. According to radio reports, dozens of civilian vehicles had tried to cross it when the cold first intensified. Military transport was still moving, in limited numbers, but even specialized equipment was struggling. Leon looked at the system display. For the first time, a new line appeared beneath current rank. Next vehicle rank, S. Requirements, unknown. Victor saw it too. "I hate that screen." Leon smiled. The old mechanic pointed at him. "That expression is exactly why." Lena traced the route with one finger. "We would need fuel before we leave. More medical supplies. Food for at least 2 weeks. Recovery cable. Extra filters. And we need actual information about road conditions. Not one radio message." Leon nodded, but he left the engine off. 4 weeks earlier, he would have chased the next upgrade, because the bus was all he had. Now Victor, Lena, and the people who relied on their deliveries would live with the result of his decisions. He contacted Ellis at the freight terminal, St. Rowan, and the highway maintenance station for weather logs, fuel availability, road reports, and confirmation of the white zone transmission. An hour later, they had enough information to trust it. More than 80 survivors were trapped between two failed transport groups, and the military planned one final extraction attempt before abandoning the route. They needed a vehicle that could carry people and supplies through temperatures where ordinary diesel systems failed. Leon looked around his bus. The same faded blue strip of old paint remained near the ceiling. The same steering wheel shape remained under his hands. Under everything else, this was still the vehicle Dobbs had practically begged someone to remove from his auction yard. Leon remembered his first night. Frost inside the windows. Dead heater. 63 liters of fuel. $37 in his bank account. Now the cabin was warm, while the world outside sat below -50. Victor leaned over the route map, while Lena began making a medical load list. They were already working through the problem with him. Leon compared the fuel estimate with the distance to the white zone, glanced once more at the unknown S-rank requirement, and reached for his coat. First, we fill the tanks. Victor sighed so deeply, his mustache moved. There it is. Lena smiled and closed the medical cabinet. Outside, the armored bus waited beneath a layer of frost, its engine cold, its front plow half buried in snow. Leon opened the door. Warm light spilled onto the frozen ground.